So Area 61, Black Creek State Park, New Jersey. It sounds like some government thing, right? Area 51 kind of vibe. It's not, or at least not officially. It's just a section of the park deep in the woods that for years has had stories attached to it. Whispers, mostly. Locals talking about weird things happening out there, noises in the night, people getting lost and finding themselves somewhere else. You know, the usual kind of local legend stuff that you usually brush off as just stories. But lately, there'd been more chatter online, on forums, even in local news blurbs about strange occurrences. Enough to make you wonder if maybe there was something more to it than just campfire tales. Me and April, we've been doing this kind of thing for a while now. Not professional paranormal investigators or anything ridiculous like that. Just curious. We like exploring the weird and unexplained. We'd heard about Area 61 and the stories, and it had been on our radar for a bit. Then the chatter started to ramp up, and we figured, why not go check it out? See what's really going on. Probably nothing, we thought, but hey, it's something to do, right? Turns out we were dead wrong about the nothing part, so wrong. We planned it for a Saturday night. No moon, perfect dark conditions, exactly what we wanted. I brought my girlfriend Sarah and the kids. They're old enough, and honestly they were more excited than scared. Teenagers, you know? Ryan came too. He's a buddy of mine who's into this stuff too. So, there were 6 of us. Me, Sarah, my 3 kids, Liam, Maya and Chloe, Ryan and April. We packed flashlights, cameras, you know, the usual gear we take when we go poking around spooky places. We drove out to Black Creek Park, got there around 9 p.m. It was already pitch black. Seriously, the kind of dark where you can't see your hand in front of your face, dark. We parked our cars, my truck and Ryan's SUV, right off the side of this narrow road that cuts through the woods, kind of near where Area 61 is supposed to be. There was no real sign, nothing official marking it, just woods, just trees and darkness. We turned off the engines and the silence just swallowed us whole, like instantly. You know how sometimes even in the woods there's a little bit of background noise. Crickets, wind rustling leaves, something. This was dead silent, unnerving silent. We got out of the cars, flashlights in hand, and stepped onto the side of the road. The air was heavy, damp, smelled like dirt and pine. The darkness was thick. As soon as we stepped away from the cars, that silence was shattered. Not by anything natural, it started low, kind of a murmur, then it got louder, sharper. Chattering like monkeys almost, but wrong. Wrong sounding. It wasn't playful chattering, it was frantic, agitated like a bunch of animals really freaked out about something. And it was coming from the woods, both sides of the road, surrounding us. Immediately, goosebumps erupted all over my skin. Sarah squeezed my hand, hard. Even the kids went quiet, their usual teenage bravado just vanishing in an instant. We all just froze, flashlights pointed into the woods, trying to see anything. The chattering got closer, louder, circling us. It felt like whatever was making those sounds was moving, weaving through the trees, getting closer and closer to the road. Then we saw it. Down the road, maybe 50 feet ahead, there's this small wooden bridge. You could barely make it out in the darkness, just a slightly darker shape against the black of the woods. Something moved across it, a shadow, indistinct, just a deeper blackness moving against the already black background. It was fast, fleeting, but we all saw it. A shape, definitely moving on 2 legs, but too big, too fluid, almost like it was melting into the darkness as it moved. It went across the bridge and vanished into the trees on the other side. The chattering went up another notch, getting frantic, almost hysterical. We were rooted to the spot, hearts hammering against our ribs. And then it happened. The loudest noise of the night so far. It came from right behind my truck. A huge, booming crash, like something massive had slammed into the metal or thrown itself against it. The truck rocked just a little, but enough to feel it through the ground. Chloe, my youngest, she'd stayed in the truck. We figured it was safer for at least one of us to stay with the cars. She screamed. Not just a little yelp, but a full-blown, terror-filled scream. We all spun around, flashlights snapping towards the truck. Chloe was scrambling out of the driver's side, eyes wide, face white as a ghost, tears already streaming down her face. She stumbled towards us, shaking, pointing back at the truck. It was there. It was right there, by the window. She was sobbing, almost incoherent. Something big, dark. It ran past and it looked at me. It had eyes, yellow eyes. Yellow eyes, that's what she kept repeating. Yellow eyes. My blood ran cold. Whatever that was, it had been right next to my daughter. Looking at her, panic just exploded. Ryan, without thinking, grabbed a big rock from the side of the road. There were loose stones everywhere, and hurled it into the darkness behind the truck. It was a big rock, heavy. You could hear it whistling through the air, then a loud splash. It landed in the water on the other side of the road, I guess. And then, the response. It wasn't chattering anymore. It was a growl, low, guttural, coming from the trees, maybe 20, 30 feet away from us. Closer than the chattering had been, a deep, animalistic growl, but again, wrong. Wrong texture, wrong tone. Too low, too resonant, like it was vibrating through the ground, through your bones. It was aimed at us, directly at us. That was it. That broke everything. All the curiosity, all the bravado, all the excitement. It just evaporated, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. I didn't even think. Instinct just took over. "Cars! Now! Get in the cars!" I yelled, already running towards my truck. We all scrambled back to the vehicles in a chaotic mess. Doors slamming, engines roaring to life. Everyone piling into the first car they could reach. I jumped into the driver's seat of my truck. Sarah and the kids crammed in beside me and in the back. Ryan and April piled into Ryan's SUV right behind us. Reverse, slam it into drive, tires spinning on the gravel, and we were gone. Flying down that narrow forest road, back the way we came, faster than I've ever driven on a road like that. The chattering started up again as we sped away, but it was further off now, receding behind us. But the growl I still heard. I could feel it, like it was in my chest, vibrating with my own heartbeat. I was just focused on getting out of there, on getting us all to safety. The road was winding, twisting through the thick woods, no lights, just the beams of our headlights cutting through the black. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, seeing Ryan's headlights behind me, trying to make sure he was still there. Then it happened. A huge, sickening thump shook Ryan's SUV, like we'd just hit something massive, something solid. I saw it in my rearview mirror. Ryan's brake lights flared red. Then he kept going, swerving a little, but staying on the road. But that thump, it sounded heavy, brutal. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, heart pounding. What the hell was that? Was it chasing us? Was it on Ryan's car? I wanted to radio him, to ask if he was okay, but I was too afraid to take my hand off the wheel, too afraid to lose focus for even a second. We just kept driving, pushing the cars as hard as we dared on that dark, winding road. The trees seemed to be pressing in on us, the shadows moving in the headlights, making shapes, playing tricks on our eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made me jump. I just wanted to get out of the woods, just wanted to see lights, to see people, to be anywhere but here. It felt like an eternity, that drive. But finally, we started to see glimpses of light through the trees ahead. Streetlights, house lights, civilization. We burst out of the woods and onto a real road, a paved road with streetlights, houses, everything normal. I pulled over as soon as I could, and Ryan pulled up right behind me, engines still racing. We all just sat there for a minute, engines idling, catching our breath, just out. Out of the darkness. Out of Area 61. Finally, Ryan turned off his engine and got out of his SUV, looking shaken, pale. April got out too. She looked just as rattled. They walked over to my truck. Sarah rolled down the window. "Are you guys okay?" I asked, voice still rough, shaky. Ryan just nodded, eyes wide. Yeah, I think so. But what the hell was that thump? I told him I saw it in my rearview mirror, how hard it looked, how the SUV seemed to shake. He walked around his car, started checking it over. Then he stopped, stared. We all went over, flashlights on, to see what he was looking at. On the rear passenger side door, right behind the window, there was a dent. Not a small dent, a big, deep dent in the metal, like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it. But it wasn't just a dent. Looking closer in the beam of the flashlights, we saw it. It wasn't random damage. It was shaped. It was a handprint, a huge handprint, pressed into the metal of the car door. But not like a human hand. Too big, way too big. And the fingers, they were too long, too thin. And there were too many of them. Not 5 fingers. More. 6? 7? I couldn't even count properly. My hands were shaking so bad. They were long and spindly like claws, and they had pressed into the metal so hard they had left distinct marks, fingernail marks. But again wrong. Not fingernails, claws, thick, blunt claws. We just stared at it, speechless, shining our flashlights on that monstrous handprint in the metal of Ryan's car, the chattering in the woods, the shadow on the bridge, Chloe's scream and the yellow eyes, the growl, the rock, the chase, the thump. And now this physical, undeniable evidence that something not human had been right there, right next to us. We didn't say much after that. We just got back in our cars and drove home, in silence. The kids were quiet, Sarah was quiet, Ryan and April were quiet. I was quiet. My mind was just reeling, trying to process, trying to understand. But there was nothing to understand, just fear. Just a deep, bone-chilling fear that lingered long after we left Black Creek Park. Ryan took his car to a body shop the next day. They said they'd never seen anything like it. Couldn't explain the dent, the shape of it, the force it would have taken to do that kind of damage. He got it fixed eventually, had to, but he kept the pictures of that handprint. He showed them to a few people, tried to talk about it, but everyone just looked at him like he was crazy. And I get it, I do. It sounds insane, but I know what we saw, I know what we heard, I know what Chloe saw, and I know what left that handprint on Ryan's car. Something real, something terrifying, something in Area 61 of Black Creek State Park that night. And I will never, ever go back there. Never. I still see those yellow eyes sometimes in my dreams, and I still hear that growl echoing in the silence when I try to sleep. I don't know what it was, what it is, out there in those woods. And honestly, I don't think I ever want to know. Indeed, story 2. Okay, so I've never really talked about this properly to anyone except my husband, Mark, and even then, it's like I try not to bring it up. But reading some of the stuff on here, it's making me think maybe someone else has seen something similar, or at least can understand a bit what I went through. I don't know. Here goes nothing, I guess. It was September, early September. Still summerish days, but nights were already getting cold and properly dark early. I'd been over at Sarah's, playing cards with her and a few others in Ellicott City. Just a regular Friday night, you know. Left a bit later than planned, probably around 2 in the morning, something like that. Mark was asleep at home, and I had about an hour and a bit drive back to our place, out near Geneva Lake, Ashwood County. Route 16 at that time of night, it's nothing. Absolutely dead. Just dark road, trees on both sides, and fields stretching out beyond that. No streetlights, barely any houses, just pure blackness. I've driven it 1,000,000 times, day and night. Never bothered me before. But that night, it was different. I was listening to some old rock on the radio, windows up, heater was on low because it was starting to get chilly even in the car. Just cruising, not speeding, just getting home. Around 3:10 a.m., I remember glancing at the clock on the dashboard, just out of habit. That's when it happened. I was on that stretch just before you get to the really wooded bit before the lake. Flat fields on either side, Corn was already harvested, so it was just stubble and dirt mostly. My headlights were cutting through the dark like knives, just that tunnel of light in front of me. And then I saw movement. On the right, in the field. At first, I honestly thought it was a deer. You see them all the time around here, especially crossing the roads at night. But this was different movement, faster somehow, and bigger. I slowed down a bit, thinking it might run out in front of me, trying to get a better look in the headlights. That's when I realized it wasn't a deer, not even close. It was huge, and walking on two legs, running actually, towards the road. Covered in dark hair, shaggy almost, moving unbelievably fast through that field. It wasn't hunched over like a bear would be if it was on two legs for a bit. This thing was upright completely, like a person, but not a person. Way too big, way too bulky, and covered in fur? Hair? I don't even know what to call it. It wasn't animal fur like I'd ever seen on a deer or anything. It looked thicker, coarser, darker, almost black in the headlight beam. My brain just sort of froze for a second. I slammed on the brakes hard. Tires screeched a bit on the asphalt. ABS kicked in, the whole 9 yards. My heart started pounding like crazy, adrenaline just flooding me. This thing was barreling towards the road, straight at me, and it was huge. I could see it more clearly now as it got closer. It was massive. Taller than any man I'd ever seen, at least 8, maybe 9 feet tall, I swear. Broad, like thick all over, not just tall. Muscles, maybe, or just bulk. Its arms were long, hanging down almost to its knees as it ran, and its legs, they were powerful-looking, churning through the field. And it was fast. So fast. Faster than anything that big should be able to move. Definitely faster than any deer. And the head... It was hard to see properly because it was mostly silhouetted against the dark field, and it was moving so fast. But it wasn't human. It had a kind of snout, I think, or a muzzle. Something sticking out further than a human face, definitely. And were those horns? Small, stubby things, dark against the dark hair on its head. I might be imagining the horns. I don't know, it was all so fast and terrifying, but I swear I saw something like small horns. It was like something out of a nightmare, some monster in the dark woods from a scary story, but it was real, right there, coming straight for me. I was frozen, staring, completely unable to move. I was just waiting for it to hit the car. It got closer and closer, running, bounding through the field. It was going to cross right in front of me, I realized, maybe even hit my car dead on. I braced for impact, hands clamped on the steering wheel, eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the crash, the shattering glass, the whatever. I tensed up, ready to be thrown around, expecting the worst. And then, nothing. Just nothing. Silence. Except for my own ragged breathing, the engine still idling, the radio softly playing. I opened my eyes slowly, headlights still shining down the road, the field on the right still empty, just stubble and dark earth. No creature, no impact, no sound of anything hitting my car. Nothing, like it had just vanished. My heart was still hammering in my chest, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. What the hell just happened? Did I imagine it? Was I hallucinating from being tired or something? But it felt so real, so incredibly, terrifyingly real. I saw it. I know I saw it. This huge, hairy thing running right at me. But then, gone. Just like that. I put the car in drive, slowly, still shaking. My foot was trembling on the gas pedal. I inched forward, glancing around wildly, left, right in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Just the empty road and fields, bathed in the headlights and then swallowed by the darkness beyond. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to just get out of there, just get home. I stepped harder on the gas, picking up speed, flying down Route 16. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, constantly, expecting to see it again, to see it chasing me, I don't know what, but there was nothing. just empty road behind me, shrinking into the darkness. I drove faster than I should have, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, every muscle in my body tense. Every shadow, every tree branch moving in the wind seemed like it was going to be it again. My nerves were absolutely shot. I just kept driving, pushing the car, just wanting to be home, to be safe, to be in my own house where things made sense. Finally, I pulled into our driveway. The house was dark and quiet, just the way I'd left it. I turned off the engine, sat there for a second, just breathing, trying to calm down. My hands were still shaking, my heart was still racing. I felt sick to my stomach. I got out of the car, fumbling with the keys, practically running to the front door. Got inside, locked the door behind me, bolted it, everything. I flipped on all the lights in the living room, just wanting to flood the place with light, to push back the darkness and the memory of what I'd seen. Mark was asleep in bed. I went into the bedroom, gently shook him awake. He was groggy, blinking, confused. I told him what happened. Not everything at once, just bits and pieces, stumbling over my words, still trying to process it myself. He listened, half asleep at first, then he started to wake up as I went on. He sat up in bed, looked at me, really looked at me. He could see I was genuinely freaked out. He asked questions. What did it look like? How big? What was it doing? I tried to explain, to describe it, but it was hard. It was so unbelievable. I told him about the size, the hair, the way it moved, the face, the maybe horns. I told him about it disappearing. He didn't say I was crazy. He could see I was genuinely terrified. He just held me for a while, told me it was okay, that maybe I'd just seen a bear or a deer standing on its hind legs or something like that. Tried to rationalize it, tried to make it something normal, something explainable. But I know what I saw. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't anything normal. It was something else, something huge and powerful and wrong, just wrong. The way it moved, the size of it, the everything, and the way it vanished, just gone. I couldn't sleep that night. Mark slept eventually, but I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying it all in my head over and over again. The headlights, the dark field, the movement, that thing running at me. Then, nothing. The next day, I drove back down Route 16 in daylight. I slowed down at the place where it happened, where I'd seen it. Sun was shining, birds were singing, just a normal sunny morning. The field was just a field, stubble and dirt. Nothing there, no tracks, no broken branches, no sign that anything unusual had been there at all. It just looked ordinary, normal, like nothing had ever happened. But I know it did. I know I saw something. And it scared me more than anything has ever scared me in my life. The pure terror of that moment, seeing that thing coming at me out of the dark. It's still with me, even now. I haven't driven Route 16 late at night since then. I take the long way around if I have to be out late. And even during the day, when I drive past that stretch, I still get a shiver down my spine. I still look at that field wondering, what was that thing? Where did it go? And will I ever see it again? I know it sounds crazy. I know people will probably say I imagined it, or that I was just tired and saw something wrong. But I swear to God, it was real. I saw it, and I'll never forget it. Never. And the worst part is, I still have absolutely no idea what it was. And that, I think, is what really gets to me. The not knowing, the complete and utter mystery of it. It just happened. And then it was over. And I'm left here with this memory, this fear, and nothing else. Nothing to explain it. Nothing to make sense of it. Just darkness. And then gone. Story 3. It was getting late, twilight kind of hanging in the trees, making everything look longer and darker. I was heading back home, taking the dark mountain trail like I always do. Sun had already dipped below the trees, but there was still some light bleeding through, enough to see the path, but everything was muted, shadowed. The kind of light that plays tricks on you, makes branches look like reaching hands, and shadows seem to move on their own. Usually that time of day is peaceful, owls starting to hoot, maybe a deer rustling in the underbrush, but this night felt different, heavy, like the air itself was thick and still. I started feeling this prickling sensation at the back of my neck. You know, that feeling when you know you're being watched, even if you can't see anything. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just the end of a long day, muscles tired, mind playing games. But it wouldn't go away. It just kept getting stronger, that feeling, like the hairs on my arms were standing on end. Then I heard it. Just a low growl at first, rumbling deep in the trees to my left. Like a dog, but way bigger, deeper, more animalistic, you know. Not the bark of a dog, more like a snarl that came from the gut. I stopped dead in my tracks, my hand instinctively going to the rifle I always carry slung over my shoulder. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I scanned the trees, trying to see what was making that sound. Darkness was thickening under the canopy, and shadows were stretching out like fingers from the bushes. And then I saw it. Up on this rocky outcrop, maybe 30-40 yards off the trail, a dark shape silhouetted against the fading light of the sky. At first, my mind registered bear, a big bear, sitting up on its haunches. But something was off. It was too big for one, and the shape, it wasn't quite right. Too bulky in the wrong places, too hunched, but also upright. I brought my rifle up, slow and steady, safety off. Figured if it was a bear, I might need to scare it off, or worse. I squinted, trying to get a clearer view. The growling had stopped, and everything was silent except for the frantic pounding of my own heart in my ears. I held my breath, and then it moved. It wasn't like a bear moving, it stood up. And as it rose, I realized that wasn't no bear. No bear I'd ever seen or heard of. It just kept going up, taller and taller, until it was towering over that rock, blocking out what little light was left behind it. It was massive. I mean huge. Way bigger than any bear, and the shape, humanoid, but twisted, wrong. It was covered in fur, dark, matted-looking fur, but it stood like a man, sort of, but wider, thicker, like its shoulders were as broad as a doorway. And its head. I couldn't make out details in the dim light, but it looked roundish, not bear-like. And then it let out a sound, not a growl this time, a scream, a piercing, high-pitched scream that ripped through the woods and sent shivers down my spine like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was raw, angry, and something else, something primal and furious, like pure, unadulterated rage. It wasn't an animal sound, not exactly. It had something human in it, but warped, corrupted. That's when the real terror hit. The kind of terror that freezes you to the bone but also makes you want to run for your life at the same time. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing, what I was hearing. My logical mind was screaming bear, mountain lion, something natural. But my gut was telling me something else, something ancient and terrible and completely unnatural. I didn't fire my rifle, I couldn't. I was paralyzed for a split second, just staring at this thing on the rock. Then instinct kicked in. Run, just run. I turned and bolted, back the way I came, down the trail. I didn't look back. I just ran as fast as my legs could carry me, branches whipping my face, the uneven ground trying to trip me up. The scream echoed behind me, and then I heard crashing sounds, heavy branches breaking, dirt and leaves flying. It was coming after me. My breath was coming in ragged gasps, lungs burning, legs aching, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The image of that creature, that sound, was burned into my mind, driving me forward. I could hear it behind me, crashing through the woods, faster than anything that big should be able to move. It was gaining on me. Then I felt it, just for a split second. a rush of hot, foul-smelling breath on the back of my neck. It was close, too close. My heart leapt into my throat. I stumbled, almost fell, but managed to keep my balance and keep running. I knew the Serpent River wasn't too far ahead. My canoe was there, tied up at the bank. If I could just reach the river, it was my only chance. The river is fast and cold, maybe. Just maybe it wouldn't follow. I pushed myself harder, digging deep, finding reserves of energy I didn't know I had. The trees blurred into a green and brown streak on either side of the trail. Finally, I broke out of the trees and saw it. The river, dark and fast, churning in the twilight. My canoe bobbed gently at the edge. Thank God. I scrambled down the bank, tripping over roots and rocks, adrenaline pumping like fire through my veins. I practically threw myself into the canoe, untied the rope with shaking hands, and shoved off from the bank with my paddle. I paddled like a madman, digging the paddle deep into the water, pulling with every muscle in my body. The current caught the canoe and pulled me downstream, faster and faster. I glanced back, over my shoulder, and there it was, standing at the edge of the bank where I'd just been, silhouetted against the lighter sky, impossibly huge and menacing. It watched me, its dark shape outlined against the darkening trees. And then it moved. It didn't hesitate. It didn't seem to consider the river, the current, the cold. It just plunged into the water. A massive splash, water flying everywhere. I could see it, even in the dim light, thrashing through the river, swimming with powerful strokes, heading right for me. I couldn't believe it. It was coming into the river. Nothing that big, that, whatever it was, should be able to move like that in water. But it was, closing the distance between us. The river current was strong, but it didn't seem to slow it down at all. I paddled harder, desperately trying to put distance between us. The spray from the river stung my face. The roar of the current drowned out everything else, except the frantic beat of my heart and the splash and thrash of the creature behind me. Finally, I rounded a bend in the river. The trees on either side closed in, and the darkness deepened. I risked another quick glance back. It was still there, further back now, but still coming. But the distance was widening, slowly, painfully slowly. The current was in my favor now, pulling me away, carrying me home. I kept paddling, not stopping, not slowing down, until I saw the lights of my cabin through the trees. Home. Sanctuary. I finally reached the shore, pulled the canoe onto the bank, and stumbled out, legs weak and shaking. I ran towards the cabin, practically falling through the door, slamming it shut behind me and throwing the bolt. My wife and kids were inside. They looked at me, startled, faces pale. They could see the terror in my eyes, the sweat pouring down my face, the wild look in my gaze. Before they could even ask, I was barricading the door, pushing the heavy wooden chest of drawers in front of it, shoving chairs under the handles. "Elias, what is it? What's wrong?" My wife's voice was trembling, fear creeping into her tone. "Lock the windows, all of them, now, and stay quiet," I hissed, grabbing my rifle from the corner and loading it, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the cartridges. They didn't ask questions, they just did it. My wife hurried to lock the windows. My kids huddled together in the corner, eyes wide with fear. We barricaded ourselves inside that old cedar cabin, the air thick with unspoken terror. I stood there, rifle in hand, heart pounding in my chest, listening. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside sent a jolt of fear through me. Then I heard it, footsteps, heavy footsteps, crushing leaves and snapping twigs coming closer, coming towards the cabin. The sound was unmistakable, big, heavy, predatory. My blood ran cold. It had followed me. It had tracked me all the way home. We stood there in silence, barely breathing, listening as the footsteps circled the cabin. Slow, deliberate, like something huge was pacing around us, sniffing at the walls, testing the defenses. I could hear its heavy breathing, rasping and guttural, right outside the walls. I could almost feel its presence, like a weight pressing down on the cabin. 20 minutes. It felt like 20 hours, 20 years. just standing there, waiting, listening to those footsteps circle us, the heavy breathing, the occasional low growl that vibrated through the wooden walls. My wife held her breath, her hand clamped over her mouth to stifle any sound. My kids were silent statues, tears streaming down their faces. Finally, the sun had fully set. Complete darkness now, except for the faint glow of the moon through the cracks in the wooden walls. And then, through a gap between the logs, I saw it, just a glimpse in the pale moonlight, a massive dark shape moving outside, right by the corner of the cabin. It was close, too close. I could smell it now. A rank, musky, animal smell, mixed with something else, something foul, something rotten. Then it attacked. It hit the cabin wall with unbelievable force. A massive impact that shook the whole structure. The old cedar groaned and creaked, timbers straining, dust and splinters raining down from the ceiling. My wife screamed, a muffled sound behind her hand. The kids cried, whimpering with terror. It hit the wall again, and again, each impact stronger than the last. The cabin shuddered and swayed. I thought it was going to collapse. I braced myself, rifle raised, finger on the trigger, waiting for it to break through, ready to defend my family, even though I knew deep down it was hopeless. Against something that powerful, that huge, a rifle was probably just a toy. It circled the cabin, attacking from different sides, hitting the walls, scratching at the door, trying to tear its way in. The sounds were deafening, the roaring, the snarling, the impact of its massive body against the wood. Like a wild animal, yes, but something more than just an animal, something intelligent and malicious, intent on breaking us down, on getting inside. It went on for what felt like an eternity. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The sounds of attack ceased, the heavy footsteps faded, the snarling and roaring died away. Silence descended. Except for the frantic pounding of our hearts and the ragged gasps of our breaths, the cabin was quiet. We stayed there, frozen, for another hour, maybe more, listening, waiting, not daring to move, to speak, to breathe too loud. The silence was almost as terrifying as the attack had been. Was it still out there? Was it waiting, watching? Was it planning another attack? Finally, as the first faint hint of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, I dared to peek out the window, through a tiny crack in the boards. Nothing. Just the woods, quiet and still. As if nothing had happened, as if the night had just been a bad dream. Slowly, cautiously, I unbarricaded the door, keeping my rifle ready, every nerve in my body screaming. I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. The morning air was cold and crisp. Birds were starting to chirp. The forest was waking up. It was like a completely different world from the nightmare of the night before. And then I saw them. In the mud around the cabin, in the soft earth under the porch, in the damp ground by the woodpile. Footprints, giant footprints, bigger than anything I'd ever seen or even imagined. Massive impressions in the earth, like a giant had walked around our cabin in the night. Humanoid in shape, but distorted, grotesque, too big, too deep, too unnatural. They circled the cabin, just like I'd heard it circling in the dark. They led off into the woods, disappearing into the undergrowth. They confirmed everything. It wasn't a dream. It was real. That creature, that thing, was real. It had been here. It had attacked our home. We left that place. Not right away, but soon after. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't live with the memory, the fear, the constant feeling of being watched. We moved closer to town, away from the deep woods, away from Dark Mountain. I never saw it again. Not like that first time. But I saw something similar. The next winter, out on Crow's Plain, near Chehalis village. Just a glimpse, in the distance, across a snow-covered field. A huge, dark shape moving between the trees. I didn't get close enough to be sure, and I didn't stick around to find out. I just turned around and went the other way, fast. I don't talk about it much. Most people wouldn't believe me anyway. They'd say it was a bear or a cougar or just my imagination running wild. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was just a nightmare brought on by too much time alone in the woods, too much stress, too much whiskey. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I know what I felt, and I still can't explain it. To this day, I can't shake the feeling, that raw, primal terror. It's still there, buried deep inside. Sometimes, when I'm out in the woods, even in broad daylight, I catch myself looking over my shoulder, listening for sounds, scanning the shadows. And I wonder, is it still out there? Still watching? Still waiting? I don't know, and I don't want to know. Some things are better left unknown, I guess. Some doors are better left unopened, and some nightmares. They just never really go away. They just stay with you, under the surface, lurking in the dark corners of your mind, waiting for the next time the shadows get long and the night gets deep. Story 4. It still messes with my head, even now. It's been, I don't even like to count, years. But sometimes when the wind is right or wrong, I guess, and it howls in a certain way, I'm right back there, freezing, heart-hammering, smelling pine needles and something else, something animal. I'm not usually one for online forums, never really got the hang of them, but I saw a thread about weird stuff that's happened to people, real-life things that just can't be explained. And something just clicked. Maybe getting it out there will help, I don't know. Doubt it, to be honest. But I gotta try something. It was hunting season, late fall, up in the Howling Mountains. Yeah, sounds cheesy, Howling Mountains. But that's what they're called around here. Folks in Elatsik, the closest town, and when I say town, I mean a gas station, a general store that doubles as a post office, and maybe 20 houses scattered around. They all know to give those mountains a wide berth. Too many stories, they say, whispers of things that ain't natural. I never paid them much mind. I've been hunting those mountains since I was a kid. My dad taught me everything I know, and he never saw anything spookier than a bear having a bad day. So anyway, hunting season. Needed to put some meat on the table for the winter. Packed up my rifle, grabbed Shadow, my old hound dog, best hunting dog a man could ask for, and headed up. It was a crisp morning, the kind where the air bites your lungs, but in a good way, you know. Sun was just peeking over the peaks, painting everything in these long shadows. Beautiful it was, peaceful. We went deep, deeper than usual, trying to find deer, bucks mostly. Shadow was sniffing around, tail wagging, ears perked. He loved this just as much as I did. We walked for hours, just the two of us, through the thick woods. The usual stuff, squirrels chattering, birds calling, the crunch of leaves under my boots. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until we got to this clearing. It wasn't a big clearing, just sudden. Like the trees just decided to stop for a bit. Mostly cedars in there, big ones, old as time, I reckon. The light was different in there, kind of dim, even though the sun was higher now. Shadow started acting up as soon as we stepped in. He stopped dead in his tracks, body tensed, hackles raised, low growl rumbling in his chest, the kind he usually only did for bears. I figured maybe we'd stumbled onto a bear den, though it felt off. Bears usually leave a smell, a musk, something you can pick up, but there was nothing, just the scent of pine and damp earth. He started barking then, not his usual excited bark when he's chasing a rabbit. This was different, frenetic, almost scared. He was barking at this cedar tree, not just barking at the base, but up, way up. I followed his gaze, squinting in the dim light. That's when I saw it, a hole, high up the trunk of this massive cedar, maybe 10, 15 feet off the ground. Roundish hole, like something had hollowed it out, looked almost like a window, but in a tree, just dark inside, black as pitch. Curiosity got the better of me. Stupid, I know. But hunting is about curiosity sometimes, following trails, checking out scrapes, seeing what's over the next ridge. I figured maybe a squirrel's nest or a raccoon den, but Shadow was acting like it was way worse than that. Easy, boy. I told him, trying to sound braver than I felt. My heart had started to pick up pace, a little thump-thump in my chest. I lifted him up. He was a big dog, but I was strong. Hoisted him up to the hole, figuring he could get a better look, sniff it out. Bad decision. Worst decision of my life, probably. As soon as his head was level with the opening, he went ballistic, snapped, snarled, lunged forward. Then he let out this yelp. Not a bark, not a growl, but a real, honest-to-God yelp of pain, like something had bitten him, or worse. I panicked. Thought maybe a trapped animal, a porcupine, something nasty. Get him, boy. Drive him out. Stupid again. Should have pulled him back, should have just left it alone. But I was thinking hunting dog instinct. Drive out the prey. Shadow kept yelping, struggling. Then, all of a sudden, the struggling stopped. Just silence, followed by this awful, wet, heavy thump. Something fell out of the tree. I lowered Shadow to the ground fast, rifle up, safety off, ready to shoot whatever the hell had hurt my dog. Expecting a raccoon, maybe, or a bobcat if it was really cornered, ready for teeth and claws. What I saw, I'll never forget it. It's burned into my brain. Lying on the ground, crumpled up like a rag doll, was a kid, naked as the day it was born. Pale, so pale it was almost grey, covered in dirt and scratches, bleeding in a few places. Thin, malnourished, but definitely a kid. Looked maybe 13, 14 years old. Hard to tell for sure. My blood ran cold, stone cold. I just stared. My mind couldn't process it. A kid? In a tree? Naked? What the hell was going on? Then the horror hit me. Shadow's yelp. The thump. The way the kid was lying there. Still. Too still. My eyes dropped to the ground next to him, and there it was. Small. 270 caliber bullet casing. The kind I used. The kind in my rifle. I'd shot him. I'd shot a kid. Mistake? Accident. Doesn't matter what you call it. I did it. Thinking it was an animal in a tree. Thinking Shadow had cornered something. But it was a kid. A whimper escaped my lips. A sick, gut-wrenching sound. I stumbled back, rifle falling to my side, forgotten. I had to be dreaming. This couldn't be real, not here, not in the howling mountains. But it was real. The pale kid on the ground, my empty casing, the silence of the woods. Except it wasn't silent anymore. A sound started. Faint at first, way off in the distance. A low, mournful cry, like an animal, but deeper. More human, but not human either. It was hard to describe. Like a howl, but not from a wolf. More guttural, more angry. It grew louder, faster, coming closer. Whatever was making that sound was moving fast. Breaking branches, snapping twigs, crashing through the undergrowth. No stealth there, just raw power, raw rage. Shadow was whimpering now too, pressed himself against my leg, fur bristling. He sensed it too. Whatever was coming. I finally snapped out of my shock, grabbed my rifle, hands shaking so bad I could barely hold it. Swung around, scanning the trees, heart pounding like a drum solo. Then it emerged from the woods. And that's when true terror hit me. Terror like I'd never felt before, and hoped to never feel again. It was a woman, but not like any woman I'd ever seen. Tall, massive, taller than me, easily 6.5 feet, maybe more. Built like, well, like a linebacker on steroids. Muscles bulging under matted fur. Yeah, fur. Covered in it. Thick, coarse, dark fur, except for her face and hands. Her face was dark, almost black. Rough, weathered skin stretched tight over sharp bones. Deep-set eyes, black as coal, burning with fury. And hair. Lord, the hair. Long, black, tangled, hanging down past her waist, almost to her knees, like a wild animal's mane. She moved like an animal, too. Powerful strides, loping gait, covering ground fast, and she was looking right at me. No, not at me, at the kid on the ground. Then she spoke, and that's when the last shred of my sanity started to unravel. She spoke, in words. But the words, they were familiar. like something I'd heard somewhere before, a long time ago, something buried deep in my memory, but I couldn't place it. It was ancient, old, older than anything I'd ever known, and angry, spitting mad. "You hurt him," that's what she said, clear as day, but not in English, not quite, more like the roots of English, something primal, something I understood somehow in the deepest part of my brain. "You hurt my friend. Wait!" I choked out, hands raised, rifle still clutched in one. I didn't know. I thought animal, mistake, accident." Words tumbling out, useless, meaningless. She ignored me, didn't even blink, stared down at the kid, then back at me, those black eyes boring into my soul. Then she did something even weirder. She started circling around the kid, slowly at first, then faster, pacing like a predator. And she started to chant, guttural sounds deep in her chest, rumbling like thunder. Words again, but different now, rhythmic, hypnotic, the same strange ancient language. The sound seemed to vibrate in the air, echoing off the trees, like the mountains themselves were answering her. Then I saw it, in her hand, something she hadn't had before, something long and dark and writhing. Snake? No, too thick, too fleshy. Intestine. That's what it looked like. An animal intestine, maybe a deer's, still fresh, still moving. Not moving like alive, but twitching, convulsing. She held it up above the kid and kept chanting, circling. Then she started to beat it against the ground, hard, smack, smack, smack. Each hit a wet, sickening sound. The ground around the kid splattered with something dark. Blood? Some kind of juice? I don't know, didn't want to know. The chanting got louder, more frantic. The beating of the intestine faster, more violent. Shadow was howling now, a long, mournful howl that mirrored the sound echoing through the mountains. I wanted to run, wanted to disappear, but I was frozen, paralyzed by fear. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence, except for our ragged breathing. The woman stood still, looking down at the kid. Then she bent down, with impossible speed and strength, scooped him up in her arms like he weighed nothing, cradled him to her chest. She stood up, turned back to me. Her face. I'll never forget her face. Pure hatred, pure rage, but something else too, something ancient, something wild. She spoke again. The same strange words, but different this time. A curse. I knew it in my bones. A curse. "You will not hunt again," she said. That's what I understood. Those words, those few, simple words, cutting through the fear, the confusion, like a blade. "Never again you will hunt in these mountains. Never again you will take life." Then she turned, walked, back into the woods, just disappeared. Like she was part of the trees, part of the shadows, taking the kid with her, leaving me standing there shaking, rifle still in my hand, empty casing on the ground, and the curse ringing in my ears. Shadow whimpered again, nudged my hand, like he was saying, "Let's get out of here." I didn't need telling twice. I stumbled back, dragging Shadow with me, tripping over roots and rocks. Didn't stop running until I was out of the clearing, out of the woods, back in the sunlight. Didn't stop running until I was back at my truck, engine roaring, tires spitting gravel as I peeled out of there. I haven't been back to those mountains since, not even close, and you know what? I haven't hunted since either. Tried. God knows I've tried. Grab my rifle, head out to the woods closer to town, places I used to hunt all the time. But nothing. I see deer sometimes, rabbits, squirrels. They just look at me, like they know, and I can't. I just can't pull the trigger. Something blocks me, like my hand is frozen, my mind is blank. I see them clear as day in my sights, and I just lower the rifle, walk away. The curse, maybe? Sounds crazy, I know. Wild woman in the mountains, ancient curse. Sounds like something out of a movie, but I was there. I saw it. I felt it. The fear, the cold, the wrongness of it all. And the worst part is, I never told anyone. Who would believe me? Crazy old hunter in the woods shoots a kid, then sees a monster woman and gets cursed. Yeah, right. They'd lock me up. Or worse, they'd laugh. So I kept it to myself. Lived with it. Let it eat away at me. The guilt about the kid, the terror of the woman, the strangeness of it all, and the curse, the real, undeniable curse. I still hear that howl sometimes in the wind, still smell the pine and something else, still see her face, those black eyes, and I know deep down that I will never hunt again. Never. And I still have no idea what the hell happened up there that day. None. Zero. Just nothing makes sense. And that's the part that really gets to you, isn't it? The stuff you can't explain. The stuff that just is. Anyway, that's my story. Take it or leave it. Probably sounds like a load of bull, but it's real. Real as the sweat on my palms right now, just remembering it. Real as the fear that still chills me to the bone all these years later. Real as the fact that I haven't been able to hunt since, and probably never will. And that's the truth. I swear to God, that's the truth. Story 5. It's weird, even now, years later, trying to type this out. It still messes with me, you know? Like a bad dream you can't quite shake. I've climbed all over the place, been in sketchy situations, had bears wander into camps, the usual wilderness stuff. But this was different. This was wrong. It was Strathcona, Orchid Island. Unreal place, honestly. Like stepping back in time. We were deep in. A good day's hike from any trail. Proper backcountry stuff. Me, Mark, and Sarah. We were doing a week-long climb, exploring some faces no one had really touched in years. Camp was set up in this small clearing surrounded by hemlocks. You know that thick, deep forest quiet? That was it. Peaceful, you think, until it wasn't. Night was black. I mean black. City black is nothing. Out there without moon, under those trees, it swallows everything. We were all dead tired, crashed early. I think it was just after 1 a.m. when I woke up. Not with a jolt or anything, just awake. At first I thought maybe I needed to pee, but no, it wasn't that. It was a sound, faint, almost lost in the background hiss of the forest, like gravel, tiny pebbles skittering on something. I held my breath, listening. There it was again. Tick, tick, like something was throwing little stones against the side of the tent. My brain went straight to animals. Maybe a squirrel, I thought, getting ambitious, trying to dig under the tent flap or something. Seemed unlikely. Squirrels aren't usually nocturnal, are they? And this was heavier than a squirrel scratching. More like footfalls, but really, really soft, and the sound of loose dirt being disturbed. I sat up slowly in my sleeping bag, my heart starting to tap a little faster. Sarah and Mark were dead asleep, breathing heavy in their bags. Good. Didn't want to wake them if it was nothing. I peeled back the tent flap just a tiny bit and peered out. Darkness. Just endless, suffocating darkness. I could barely make out the shapes of the trees right around the clearing. My eyes strained, trying to adjust, trying to find some light source. Nothing. Absolute zero. It was like looking into a void. Then the sound again. Closer this time. Scrape. Tick-tick. Shuffle. Definitely outside the tent, right on the other side of the canvas. And it wasn't pebbles anymore. It sounded heavier now, like something dragging lightly against the ground, mixed with soft footfalls. Like someone was walking around the tent, right up against the side, just circling. That prickle of unease turned into something colder, something in my gut twisted. This wasn't squirrels. This wasn't normal animal sounds. This was deliberate, and way too close. I reached for my headlamp. My hands were a bit shaky, I noticed. Stupid, I thought. It's probably just a deer or something, spooked. But my hand hesitated on the zipper of the tent. I didn't want to open it. Not yet. I unzipped it just enough to poke the headlamp through and flicked it on. The beam cut through the black, a shaky cone of light pushing back the shadows. At first, nothing. Just the canvas of the tent, then the blurry green of ferns and low bushes right around our campsite. My breath hitched. Everything looked wrong, empty and too still. I slowly widened the opening, just enough to get my head and shoulders out. The beams swept wider. More trees, thick trunks rising into the darkness. Nothing moving. Silence, except for the normal forest sounds, the crickets, the rustle of leaves far off in the distance. For a second, I actually felt stupid. Was I just imagining things? Was I just jumpy after a long day? Then I saw it. At the edge of the trees, where the clearing ended and the real dense forest started. Just inside the shadow line, maybe 10, 15 feet away. A shape, darker than the dark around it. Massive. It was hard to make out at first, swallowed by the shadows, but as my eyes focused, as my headlamp caught it just right, the form started to solidify. It was tall, incredibly tall, way taller than any person, and human-shaped but wrong, like a distorted man, stretched and twisted, blacker than the night. Solid black, like it sucked all the light in, like a hole punched in the darkness. I froze. My breath stopped. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I could hear it in my ears, drowning out the forest sounds. My hand tightened on the headlamp, the plastic digging into my skin. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared. It was just standing there, perfectly still, just a black shape at the edge of the trees, watching the tent. No features, just form. Humanoid, but inhuman, terrifyingly, profoundly wrong. And then it moved, slowly at first, just a slight shift of its weight. Then it started to step forward, out of the deepest shadows and into the edge of my headlamp beam. It was moving towards the tent, towards me. The gravel sound came back, louder now. Not pebbles anymore, more like crunching leaves and twigs underfoot, heavy footfalls, but silent at the same time. Like the ground absorbed the sound, muffling it, making it even creepier. It moved with a speed that was impossible. Not running, not striding, more like gliding, sliding through the shadows, faster than anything that size should be able to move, especially in that terrain. It closed the distance between us in what felt like a heartbeat. Terror, pure ice-cold terror flooded me. My brain just short-circuited. All thoughts, all reason, just vanished. There was only the black thing moving towards me and the instinct to run. I scrambled backwards, tripping over my own feet, falling back into the tent with a thud. I didn't even register the pain, just adrenaline pumping, every nerve screaming danger. I ripped myself out of my sleeping bag, stumbling backwards, away from the opening. I don't even remember thinking, just reacting. "Mark, Sarah, wake up!" I yelled, my voice cracking, raw with panic. I ripped at Sarah's sleeping bag, shaking her, trying to get her awake. Mark was stirring, groaning in his bag. The tent fabric rustled right behind me, right next to the opening I'd just been looking through, like something was brushing against it. Or pressing. I whipped around, still scrambling backwards, heart about to explode, and it was there, right outside the tent, closer than before, so close I could feel the presence of it, like a wave of cold, oppressive darkness radiating off of it. I could almost see the tent fabric bulging inward slightly where it was close. My headlamp was still on, lying on the ground inside the tent, still pointing towards the opening. It caught the edge of the thing again, just for a split second, enough to see it clearer. It was definitely humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, head, kind of, but stretched, elongated, wrong proportions. The head was just a rounded shape on top. No features I could make out in that instant of light. And the blackness. It was like looking at the absence of light itself. It was thick, consuming. And the height. God, it was tall. Looking up at it from inside the tent made it seem colossal, like it could just reach down and do anything. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone, vanished. 1 second it was there, a towering black figure looming over the tent, and the next, Nothing. Just blackness and the trees. I blinked, heart still hammering. Was I hallucinating? Had I imagined it? No, I knew I hadn't. The fear was too real. The image burned into my eyes. I wasn't making this up. Mark and Sarah were finally awake now, both of them sitting up, blinking, looking confused. "What the hell, Alistair?" Mark grumbled, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Sarah looked scared already, sensing something was wrong. "What is it? What happened?" I just stared at the tent opening, still shaking. There was something outside, I stammered, my voice still trembling. Something big, black, like a person, but not, right outside the tent. They exchanged looks, clearly thinking I'd lost it. Mark chuckled nervously. "A person? Out here? At this hour? Dude, you were dreaming?" "No, I swear I saw it. It was huge and black, standing right there." I pointed to the tent flap, my hand shaking. It was circling the tent, and then it was right there. I saw it. Sarah frowned, looking concerned. "What did it look like, Alistair? Really look like?" I struggled to find the words. How do you describe something that defies description? Like a shadow, but solid. Like a person made of night, tall, so tall, and it moved, wrong, fast, but silent. I don't know how to explain it. Mark was still skeptical, but he was getting a little worried now. He reached for his own headlamp and cautiously unzipped the tent further, peering out. He shone his light around the clearing into the trees. "I don't see anything, Alistair, just trees. Probably a bear or something spooked you." "It wasn't a bear," I insisted, my voice rising again. It was humanoid. It stood upright. I saw the shape of it. It was blacker than anything. You don't understand." Sarah put a hand on my arm, trying to calm me down. Okay, Alistair. We believe you saw something. Maybe it was just your eyes playing tricks. Darkness can do that, especially when you're tired. I wanted to yell at them, to make them understand what I'd seen, the sheer terror of it. But I could see in their eyes. They didn't believe me. They thought I was freaked out, overtired, seeing things in the dark. And a part of me, a small, desperate part of me, wanted to believe them too. Wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, just my imagination running wild. But deep down I knew what I'd seen was real, and it was terrifyingly, impossibly real. I shook my head, feeling defeated. "Fine," I mumbled, forcing my voice to be calmer. Maybe it was a deer or an elk. Yeah, an elk. Elks can be big and dark, right? Maybe it was just an elk." Mark nodded, relieved. "Yeah, see? Probably an elk sniffing around for food. No big deal, just gave you a fright." He forced a laugh. Sarah still looked at me with concern, but she didn't push it. She knew I wasn't really convinced, but she let it go. She probably figured it was better to just drop it and get some sleep. We settled back down in the tent, the air thick with unspoken fear and disbelief. Mark and Sarah eventually drifted back to sleep, their breathing evening out again. But I couldn't sleep, not a wink. I lay there staring at the tent fabric, every rustle of leaves outside sending a jolt of fear through me. Every shadow seemed to move. I kept replaying the image in my head, the black shape at the edge of the trees, the way it moved, the absolute dread it had filled me with. It wasn't an elk. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't anything natural. It was something else. Something wrong. When dawn finally broke, grey and weak through the trees, I was exhausted but strangely wired. As soon as it was light enough, I scrambled out of the tent. Mark and Sarah followed, still looking groggy. "See? Nothing here," Mark said, gesturing around the clearing. "All clear. Told you it was probably just a deer." I looked around, trying to convince myself, but my eyes kept going to the edge of the trees, to the exact spot where I'd seen it. And then I saw them, faint, almost invisible in the soft earth. Footprints, but not animal prints, not like any animal I'd ever seen. They were big, huge, much bigger than human footprints. And oddly shaped, elongated, narrow, with a strange three-toed look to them, though blurred and indistinct, like something heavy had stepped there, but not cleanly, more like dragging its feet slightly. They weren't deep prints, barely disturbed the leaves and pine needles, but they were there, leading from the edge of the trees, right up to the tent, circling it, and then just disappearing back into the woods. I pointed them out to Mark and Sarah, my voice barely a whisper. They followed my gaze, their eyes widening as they saw the faint impressions in the earth. They didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the prints, then at each other, then back at the trees. The skepticism in Mark's eyes was gone, replaced by something else. Uncertainty, maybe even a flicker of fear. Sarah just looked pale and shaken. We packed up camp in silence, the cheerful morning air feeling heavy and oppressive. The forest felt different now, watched, menacing. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. We hiked out that day, faster than we'd planned, barely speaking, just putting distance between ourselves and that clearing. I didn't tell them what I really thought it was, didn't want to sound crazy, but in my gut I knew. It wasn't an animal. It was something other, something that didn't belong. We never went back to that spot in Strathcona. Never talked about it much after that trip. It just became one of those things we didn't talk about. But it's there, in the back of my mind. Every time I go into the woods, every time it gets dark in the mountains, I think about it. That black shape at the edge of the trees. And I know deep down that something out there is watching. Something ancient, something dark, and something we don't understand. And that's the part that really gets to you, you know? Not knowing, not understanding, just the raw, primal fear of the unknown, the feeling that you've glimpsed something you were never meant to see, and that it saw you too. Story 6. So, Friday night, it's me, Liam, Sarah, and Mark. Mark had just gotten his license, which was a big deal back then. Suddenly, we had wheels. We could actually go somewhere further than the damn bus route would take us. He had this beat-up old Civic, but man, to us, it was freedom. Liam was always the one with the ideas, usually the bad ones. This time, though, it seemed kinda cool at first. He'd heard some stuff, rumors, you know, whispered around school, about Goldstream Park. Not the park itself exactly, but the hills behind it, towards the railway tracks. East and North Railroad, I think they called it. Anyway, supposedly there were these old trails back there, forgotten logging roads maybe. And Liam, being Liam, thought it'd be epic to go exploring as it got dark. Sarah was skeptical, like always. She was the sensible one. "Why would we want to go wander around in the dark in the woods?" she asked, giving Liam that look she had down pat. The one that said he was being an idiot, but she was still slightly amused. Mark was in the middle, kinda leaning towards adventure, but also a bit nervous about his mom's car. I was just there. Up for anything, really, especially if it beat another night of nothing happening. "Come on, Sarah," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "It'll be interesting, and it's not like we're going deep into the park. Just the hills, right?" I looked at Liam. "Yeah, just the hills," he said, grinning. "Easy peasy. We can go check out the view, maybe find some cool spots. It'll be dark enough for it to be interesting, but we'll stick to the edges, near the tracks. Can't get lost if we can see the tracks, right?" That made some sense, even to Sarah. So, after getting some fries and coffees, because teenage Friday nights always involve fries and coffee, right? We piled into Mark's Civic. The sky was already starting to get that dusky orange glow on the horizon. We drove out of town, past the strip malls and the last houses, towards Goldstream. It's weird, even now thinking back on it, how normal it all felt at first. Driving down Millstream Road, joking around, listening to some dumb pop song on the radio. It felt like any other night, any other aimless teenage adventure. We parked near the park entrance, but not in the actual parking lot. We went a bit further down the road to a kind of pull-off near where the tracks seemed to run. We got out of the car, and it was immediately different. The air was cooler, and there was that smell of damp earth and pine needles. No more car horns, no more people yelling. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that's thicker, somehow, than just the absence of noise. The tracks were there, just like Liam said, running parallel to the road, then curving up into the hills. We could see the faint outline of trails heading up from near the tracks, disappearing into the trees. The sky was getting darker fast now, the orange bleeding into purple and then into grey. "All right," Liam said, rubbing his hands together. "Let's go." He started walking towards the tracks, and we followed, a bit more hesitant now. It wasn't quite as epic feeling as it had sounded in the afternoon light. The shadows were long and weird, and everything just looked bigger, somehow, in the fading light. We started up one of the trails. It was steeper than I thought it would be, and the ground was loose dirt and gravel. Every few steps your foot would slide a bit. We were mostly quiet now. The joking stopped. Just the sound of our own feet crunching on the trail and the rustling of leaves in the trees. And this weird, low hum in the distance, like maybe the power lines, or the train tracks themselves vibrating. I don't know. We climbed for maybe 10-15 minutes. It was getting properly dark now. The last bit of orange was gone from the sky, and the trees were just black shapes against a dark grey background. Liam pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight app. The beam of light cut through the darkness, bouncing off tree trunks and rocks. "Okay," he said. "How about here? Good view." We were on a sort of ridge, looking out over, well, not much, really. Mostly just trees, stretching out below us. You could faintly see the lights of Colwood in the distance, like a faint sprinkle of glitter spread out on black velvet. And further off, we thought we could make out the faintest shimmer of the water. We stood there for a bit, just looking, not really talking. The quiet was heavy, pressing down on us. Then Sarah shivered. "It's getting cold," she said. "Maybe we should head back," Mark agreed. "Yeah, I'm kinda hungry. Pizza?" Liam was about to say something, probably to try and get us to go further up when it happened. It was movement. Just a flicker, really, at first. Up above us, on the hillside, beyond the train tracks. Something moved in the shadows. At first I thought it was maybe a deer. Deer are common around here, right? But then it moved again, and it was wrong. Too big, too dark, and it was moving way too fast for a deer. "What's that?" Sarah whispered, grabbing my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. Her voice was tight, breathy. Liam was pointing his phone's light up the hill, trying to get a better look. The beam danced around, catching glimpses of trees, bushes, nothing. Then the light flickered across something darker, something solid, that definitely wasn't a tree trunk. It was tall, ridiculously tall, standing there, just there, on the hillside. At first I couldn't really make out any details. It was just a dark shape against the dark trees, but it was huge, like way taller than any person, any deer, any animal I'd ever seen. And then, the eyes. That's what I remember most clearly, even now. The eyes. 2 points of light, glowing in the darkness. Yellow. Not just reflecting light, but glowing, like little lamps burning in the dark. And they were fixed on us, staring right at us. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't move. I felt like I was frozen to the spot, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The fear, it was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It wasn't just being scared, it was primal. Like my body knew instinctively that we were looking at something that we shouldn't be seeing, something dangerous. "What the hell is that?" Mark breathed, his voice barely a whisper. He took a step back, bumping into Sarah. Liam was silent, just staring, his light shaking in his hand, illuminating patches of ground, then swinging back up to the dark shape on the hill. The yellow eyes were still there, burning, and then it moved. It didn't just walk, It flowed. It was like watching a shadow detach itself from the trees and glide down the hillside. It was impossibly fast, covering ground in huge, silent strides. It moved on two legs. I could see that now. Two long, spindly legs ending in... I couldn't see its feet, but I could tell it was standing upright, like a person, but not. And the size, it was bigger than we thought. Way bigger. Liam had said maybe 8, 12 feet. Standing there, it looked closer to 10 feet, maybe even more. It was enormous, unnaturally tall. The way it moved, it was like it was gliding, floating just above the ground, and it was coming towards us, fast. That's when the screaming started. I think it was Sarah who screamed first, a high-pitched, terrified shriek that cut through the quiet night. Then Mark yelled something, just a panicked sound, not words. Liam dropped his phone. The light went out, plunging us into near-total darkness, just the faint starlight filtering through the trees and the burning yellow eyes coming closer, faster. We turned and ran. We didn't even think. We just ran. Down the trail, stumbling, tripping, scrambling blindly through the dark. Branches whipped at my face, thorns tore at my clothes. I could hear my own breath rasping in my ears, the pounding of my heart, and the sound of something behind us. Something moving through the undergrowth, keeping pace with us, even faster maybe. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. I just ran, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. I could hear the others behind me, panting, sobbing. We were all just running for our lives. We reached the tracks, scrambling down the embankment, stumbling onto the gravel. The tracks stretched out on either side, disappearing into the darkness. We ran along the tracks, away from the hill, towards the road, towards the car, towards anything that felt like safety. We didn't stop running until we were back at the car, fumbling with the door handles, throwing ourselves inside. Mark was shaking so badly he could barely get the key in the ignition. Sarah was sobbing, gasping for breath. Liam was just white, completely pale, his eyes wide and staring straight ahead. He picked up his phone from the floor of the car. The screen cracked. He fumbled with it for a second, and then the flashlight flickered on again. He shined it back up the tracks, back towards the hill. Nothing, just darkness. Trees, the empty tracks, the black hillside. The yellow eyes were gone. Mark started the car with a jerky lurch and slammed it into reverse, backing out onto the road and speeding away, tires spitting gravel. We didn't say a word the whole drive back to town. The car was filled with this thick, suffocating silence, the silence of shock, of disbelief, of terror. When we got back to Colwood, Mark just dropped us off at our houses. No pizza, no talking, we just went home. I practically crawled into bed, still shaking, still hearing Sarah's scream in my ears, still seeing those yellow eyes burning in the dark. The next day, it was weird. It felt like a dream almost, like it couldn't have really happened, but it had. We all knew it had. We met up later that afternoon, at the park, ironically enough. Just the four of us. We sat on a bench, avoiding looking at the hills behind us. We talked about it, hesitantly at first, trying to make sense of it, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a bear, Mark offered weakly, standing on its hind legs. But we all knew it wasn't a bear. Bears don't have yellow eyes like that. Bears don't move like that. And bears definitely aren't that tall. Or a cougar, Sarah suggested, her voice still shaky. Cougars can be big, right? Cougars don't stand up, Liam said, finally speaking, his voice low and gravelly. And, did you see the eyes? Those weren't animal eyes. We fell silent again. We knew, deep down, what we'd seen. We just didn't want to admit it, didn't want to say the words out loud, because saying it would make it real, make it more terrifying than it already was. But then, other people started talking. Word spread, you know, how it does in small towns. Rumors flying around school, whispers in the hallways. Someone else had seen something, near the tracks, up in the hills. A group of older guys, apparently. They'd been up by the hydro tower. You know, the big one near the park, you can see it from miles away. They'd been messing around, climbing it, being stupid teenagers. And they saw it too. They said the same thing. Tall, dark, fast, yellow eyes, moving in the shadows. They described it almost exactly like we had. Some of them even said they thought it was chasing a pickup truck with kids in the back. Kids who'd been hanging out near the tracks looking for something. Suddenly, it wasn't just us. Other people had seen it. It wasn't just our imaginations, fueled by teenage boredom and cheap coffee. It was real. Something was out there, in the hills behind Goldstream. Something wrong. And the worst part is, no one could really describe it. Even the older guys who were trying to act all tough, they couldn't give any real details. Just tall, dark, yellow eyes. It was like it was designed to be seen in the shadows, to be just out of focus, just beyond comprehension. Elusive. Terrifyingly elusive. We haven't gone back to the hills since, not even close. I still drive past Goldstream sometimes, on my way somewhere else. And I always glance up at the hills, at the dark trees, at the shadows under the branches. And I feel that shiver of fear run down my spine, because I know somewhere up there, in the dark woods, it's still there, watching, waiting. And I have no idea what it was, or what it wanted, and I honestly never want to know. Story 7. Okay, so, something happened to me last winter that I still can't really explain. I mean, I've told a few people, close friends, but it's not something you bring up at a barbecue, you know? It sounds insane when you say it out loud, and honestly, sometimes I wonder if I dreamed it. But I know I didn't. It was a late winter day. Almost felt like spring was teasing us. Then bam, another dump of snow. Victoria was all messed up that morning, roads were a joke, and work basically shut down. My buddy Mark called me up. He was bouncing off the walls. Cabin fever, I guess. John, man, let's ditch this city nonsense, go for a hike, maybe even a late deer hunt. He knows I'm always up for getting out into the woods. We're both experienced hunters, not cowboys or anything, but we know our way around the bush. Been doing it since we were kids, so we grabbed our gear, rifles, backpacks, the whole 9 yards, and headed out towards Sook. We figured Tugwell Lake area, out past the usual crowds, would be good. It's pretty isolated back there, especially in winter. The drive out was beautiful. Snow piled up on either side of the road, the sun trying to break through the clouds, making everything sparkle. Felt good just to breathe that crisp, cold air, get away from the city for a bit. We parked the truck off the main road, snow already pretty deep there, slung our rifles over our shoulders and started up the trail we know well. It's not really a trail, more of a game trail, winding uphill through the trees. The snow was fresh, untouched, like stepping into a postcard. And that's the first thing that struck me as odd. Normally, even way out there, you see signs of other people, other animals. Deer tracks for sure, maybe some rabbit or coyote. But this time, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just pure, white, undisturbed snow. I even mentioned it to Mark. Weird, right? Not a single track. He just shrugged. Maybe we got here before anyone else. Yeah, maybe. But it still felt off. Quiet, too. Unnaturally quiet. Like the woods were holding their breath. We kept going, climbing higher, the trees getting thicker and darker. The air was cold, biting a bit but not unbearable. And then we topped this little rise, kind of a plateau up there, and the smell hit us. Jesus, that smell. I wish I could forget that smell. Mark stopped dead, sniffing the air like a hound dog. What in the hell is that? He whispered. It was meaty, but rotten, decaying, mixed with something else, something musky and animalistic. Like you walked past a dumpster in August, but times 10, and with a wild animal thrown in there for good measure. I've smelled bear before, taken down a few in my life. This wasn't exactly bear, but it was in the same ballpark, just worse, way worse, nauseating. We looked at each other, a little unease starting to creep in. Bear, maybe? Real close? Mark asked, his voice a little higher than usual. I shook my head. Bears are usually denned up this time of year, plus this smell, it's different. We both knew it. It was like something primal, something ancient. That smell made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. But we're not idiots. We're armed. We're together. We know these woods. We figured, okay, maybe it's a dead animal somewhere close by, something big that's been decaying for a while. Gross, but it happens. We decided to move on, keep our eyes peeled, and maybe hunt a bit lower downwind if we could get out of the stench. We spent the rest of the afternoon tracking deer sign further into the woods. We didn't see anything, not even a squirrel. The quiet was still there, that heavy, oppressive quiet, broken only by the crunch of our boots on the snow and the wind sighing through the trees way up high. The smell, thankfully, faded as we moved, but that feeling, that prickling unease, stayed with me. Like eyes were on us, even though I knew it was just the woods being woods. Or so I tried to tell myself. The sun started to dip behind the mountains, casting long blue shadows across the snow. We knew we should start heading back. We hadn't had any luck anyway, and the light was going fast. "All right, Mark. Time to pack it in," I said, turning to start back down the trail. He nodded, already turning around. And that's when we saw them. Right there, smack in the middle of our own tracks, heading back the way we came. Footprints. But not just any footprints. These things were enormous. I stopped dead again, my breath catching in my throat. Mark bumped into me. "What? What is it?" He followed my gaze down to the snow. Silence. Complete silence. Except for the blood rushing in my ears. They were footprints, clear as day in the snow. Bare footprints. No boot tracks, no socks, just skin. And they were huge, like cartoonishly huge. I wear a size 12 boot, and these things dwarfed mine. I'd guess looking at them maybe 18 inches long, maybe even more, and wide. God, they were wide. Like a paddle. 4 toes, maybe 5, hard to tell exactly in the snow, but definitely not human. Not like any human foot I'd ever seen or heard of. They were walking right in our tracks, stepping almost perfectly in the places we'd just been. As if something had been following us close. My heart started hammering in my chest. Fear, real, raw, bone-chilling fear, hit me like a punch in the gut. I felt my hands start to sweat, even in the freezing air. I looked at Mark, and his face was white as the snow. His eyes were wide, staring at the tracks, then back up the trail into the darkening woods. "What? What is that?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't have an answer, couldn't think of an answer. My mind was racing, trying to process what I was seeing. Bear tracks are big, but they're clawed and shaped totally different. Moose tracks, same thing. This was something else entirely. Something that walked upright. Something that walked barefoot in the snow in freezing temperatures and left tracks that size. I don't know, I finally managed to croak out. But they're following us. The realization hit us both at the same time, like a physical blow. Whatever made those tracks, whatever smelled like death and rot, had been behind us all day, watching us. Mark reached for his rifle, fumbling a bit, his hands shaking. I did the same, my fingers clumsy as I flipped off the safety. The metallic click sounded deafening in the silence. We both chambered rounds, the sound echoing unnaturally loud. We need to get out of here," Mark said, his voice trembling. "Yeah," I agreed. "Yeah, let's go." We didn't say another word. We just started moving, fast, not running, not yet, but a fast, determined walk, eyes darting around, rifles held ready. We kept to the trail, our own tracks now overlaid with those things. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made us jump. The woods suddenly felt alive, watching us, listening to us. The shadows seemed to deepen, to stretch and reach out. The trees looked like twisted figures, menacing and silent. The fear was like ice water in my veins, spreading through me, making my muscles tense, my breath shallow. I kept expecting to see something, to hear something else besides the wind and our own pounding hearts. But there was nothing, just the tracks. Just those monstrous, silent tracks following us, getting closer to the truck, to safety. With every step, the light faded more. Dusk was turning into full-blown night, the woods closing in around us, swallowing the light. We picked up the pace, almost a jog now, stumbling over roots and rocks hidden under the snow. We didn't dare use our headlamps, didn't want to advertise our position, didn't want to see what might be out there in the darkness, just beyond the beam. I kept glancing back at the tracks. They were still there, unwavering, right in our path. It felt like whatever made them was still back there, just out of sight, pacing us, waiting. We reached a steeper downhill section of the trail. The pace became almost a run. We were slipping and sliding on the snow, our rifles bouncing against our backs, but we didn't care. Just wanted to get to the truck, to get out of those woods. Then we heard it. A sound, not a growl, not a howl, not anything I could readily identify. It was a heavy breathing sound, like something huge, something with massive lungs taking deep, ragged breaths. Close, too close. It was behind us, off to the side, somewhere in the trees. We both froze, turning, rifles raised, scanning the darkness, but we couldn't see anything. Just the black shapes of trees, the snow gleaming faintly in the last light. The breathing sound stopped. Silence again, but not the quiet from before. This was a thick, heavy silence, a silence that felt pregnant, waiting to explode. We didn't wait to find out what was going to explode. We ran, full-out sprint down the hill, crashing through branches, stumbling, almost falling, but keeping going. The adrenaline was pumping, pure, unadulterated fear driving us. I didn't look back, didn't want to see what might be gaining on us, didn't want to know. We burst out of the trees and into the small clearing where we'd parked the truck. We scrambled for the doors, fumbling with the keys, throwing ourselves inside. Mark practically ripped the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life, the headlights cutting through the darkness. He slammed it into gear, and we fishtailed out of there, gravel spitting, snow flying. We didn't stop until we were back on the main road, asphalt under the tires, streetlights flickering in the distance. We didn't say anything for a long time, just drove, breathing hard, staring straight ahead. The heater blasted warm air into the cab, but I was still shivering, cold to the bone. Finally, Mark broke the silence. "Jesus Christ, John, what the hell was that?" His voice was still shaky. I shook my head, still trying to catch my breath. I don't know, man. I have no freaking idea." We drove the rest of the way back to Victoria in silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When I got home, I just went straight to bed, even though it was still early. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, that smell, those tracks. They were burned into my mind. The next morning, I woke up still feeling uneasy, restless. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I had to know what those tracks were, what we had seen. I called Mark, told him I wanted to go back. He was hesitant, understandably, but I convinced him. We rounded up a couple more guys, brought cameras, plaster of Paris, everything we could think of to try and get some kind of proof. We went back up to Tugwell Lake the next day, in broad daylight, with 2 extra guys and a lot more bravado. But when we got to the spot on the trail, the snow was gone, completely melted. A warm front had moved in overnight, and all that fresh snow was just gone, vanished, including the tracks. We searched around, looked for anything, any sign, any broken branches, anything at all that might explain what we saw. Nothing. The woods were just woods, normal, silent. No smell, no tracks, no nothing. Like it had all been a bad dream. We walked away empty-handed, feeling stupid, feeling like maybe we had imagined the whole thing. But I know we didn't. I saw those tracks. Mark saw them too. We both smelled that awful smell. We both heard that breathing. And to this day, I can't explain it. I've hunted in those woods for years, seen all kinds of things. Never anything like that. Never anything that felt so wrong. So ancient. It's like we stumbled onto something we weren't supposed to see. Something that belongs deep in the wild. Something that wants to stay hidden. And it followed us. It tracked us in our own footprints. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up in a cold sweat. That smell in my nostrils. Those tracks burned into my eyes. The sound of that heavy breathing echoing in my ears. And I wonder, what was it? What was out there in the woods that day? And is it still out there? Waiting. Story 8. Okay, so this is going to sound crazy. I know it. Believe me, I replay it in my head all the time, and it still sounds insane to me. But it happened. I swear to God it did. And I need to tell someone, anyone, even if it's just into the void of the internet. I work for the government, been doing it for almost 15 years now. Not exactly the kind of government job that's all desks and air conditioning. More like boots on the ground, emergency response kind of stuff. Think wildfires, floods, anything disaster-related. I've seen some messed up stuff over the years, you know. Hurricanes ripping apart coastal towns, towns swallowed by rivers, entire forests burning to the ground. Nature's a bitch sometimes, plain and simple. You see enough of it, you get calloused. Or you're supposed to anyway. But nothing, absolutely nothing in my years of doing this prepared me for what went down outside of Battle Mountain last summer. The Nevada wildfires were raging out of control, just monstrous. Tens of thousands of acres gone, homes threatened, the air thick with smoke for miles and miles. We were pulled in from all over, crews from different agencies, all hands on deck trying to contain the damn thing. Days blurred together, heat, smoke, the constant roar of the fire, the smell of burning everything getting stuck in your nostrils, in your clothes, in your goddamn hair. Sleep was a luxury. Food was whatever you could shove down between shifts. We were working a sector, a particularly stubborn front that kept flaring up. It was late afternoon, sun beating down so hard you could practically feel it frying your brains through your helmet. The air shimmered with heat haze and smoke, and everything was this weird orange-grey color, like looking at the world through a dirty filter. We were exhausted. Morale was low. Everyone was pushing on fumes. That's when it happened. We were cutting a fire line, hacking away brush and trees, trying to create a break to stop the fire's advance. The noise was deafening, the crackle and roar of the fire nearby, the whine of chainsaws, the shouts of the crew chiefs. Then someone yelled, hold up, everyone!" Chainsaws died down, the noise level dropped instantly, but the fire was still screaming around us. I straightened up, wiping sweat from my forehead, squinting through the smoke. I saw what had made the guy yell. Up ahead, in a small clearing that the fire had somehow spared for the moment, there was something. At first I thought it was a bear, burned and hurt, maybe disoriented from the smoke. We'd seen animals fleeing the fire before, deer mostly, panicked and running blindly. But this wasn't moving like a deer. It was too big for one thing, and the way it was just sitting there, slumped over. We cautiously approached, axes and Pulaskis raised, ready for anything. As we got closer, the bear idea just melted away. This thing was massive, bigger than any bear I'd ever seen, and I've seen grizzlies up close in Montana. It was built different. It was on all fours, but its limbs were long, too long for a bear, and its back was rounded, not hunched like a bear's. It was covered in fur, brownish fur that was matted and singed and patchy in places from burns. The smell was awful, burnt hair and something else, something musky and acrid. I can't really describe it. But it wasn't moving, wasn't snarling, wasn't trying to attack. It was just there, slumped, like it had just given up. We got closer still, and that's when we really saw it. Its head. It wasn't a bear's head. It was elongated, almost dog-like, but bigger, much bigger. The snout was long, and it had these ears? Or were they horns? Hard to tell. They were burnt and twisted. And its eyes, I'll never forget its eyes. They were closed at first, and I thought, maybe it's dead. But then, slowly, they opened. And they were human. Not exactly not like ours, but intelligent. There was something in them, some kind of awareness, some kind of sadness. It looked defeated. It didn't try to run. It didn't growl or snap or show any aggression at all. It just looked at us, like it was waiting for us, like it knew we were going to find it. Someone, I think it was Martinez, young kid barely out of training, whispered, "What the hell is that?" Nobody had an answer. We were all just staring, mouths open, trying to process what we were seeing. This wasn't in any of the manuals. This wasn't a mountain lion or a coyote or anything you'd expect to find in the Nevada wilderness. This was something else entirely. Then it groaned, a low, guttural sound, like a human groan, but deeper, resonating in its chest. And that's when we saw the burns properly. They were bad. Across its back, its flanks, even its face. Raw, red, blistering. It was clearly in agony. Someone, I think it was Miller, our crew chief, said, Okay, let's just assess. Thorne, you got your EMT bag, right?" Yeah, I did. Years of EMT training kicking in, even in the face of something completely unexplainable. "Yeah, got it. Right, let's approach cautiously. Keep your weapons ready, but I don't think it's going to attack." We moved in slowly, me in front with my medical bag. The creature just watched us, its eyes tracking our movements, but no threat in them. Just pain and something else. Resignation, maybe? As we got closer, we could see more details. Its fur was coarse, thick in places, almost like bristles in others. Its claws were long and thick, but dull, like they were used for digging, not fighting. And its teeth. When it opened its mouth to groan again, we saw teeth. Not sharp, pointed carnivore teeth. More like grinding teeth. Flat, like an herbivore almost. But massive. I got close enough to start checking its vitals. Heart rate rapid, breathing shallow, skin hot to the touch, definitely in shock. The burns were extensive, deep second degree at least, maybe third in places. It needed serious medical attention, and fast. Just then, we heard the sound of a vehicle approaching. Not a fire truck, it sounded different, more like an SUV. Weird. Who's coming out here? We were miles from anywhere. A black SUV pulled up, dust billowing behind it. Two men in dark suits got out. They looked out of place, like they just stepped out of a city office building and into a raging wildfire. "What's going on here?" one of them demanded, his voice sharp, authoritative. Miller stepped forward, still holding his axe. "We found a situation. Injured animal. We're assessing." The man in the suit pushed past him, looking at the creature. His eyes widened, just for a second, before he masked it again. "Right, okay, we'll take it from here." "Take it? Take it where?" Miller asked, confused. "This thing is seriously injured. It needs a vet, like yesterday." "We have resources," the man in the suit said vaguely. He pulled out a radio, spoke into it in clipped, jargony sentences that I couldn't really understand. Within minutes, another vehicle arrived. This one was unmarked. A plain utility truck, the kind you see contractors using, but spotless, too clean. Then two more people got out of the SUV. One was a woman in a doctor's coat. The other, he was in scrubs, but something about him was off. He didn't look like a human doctor. He had different eyes, slightly slanted, almost feline, and his movements were too precise, too controlled. It was like he was imitating human behavior, but not quite getting it right. The woman in the doctor's coat introduced herself as Dr. Allen. The other one, she just said, "This is Dr. Vargas." Vargas. He didn't speak, just nodded, his eyes fixed on the creature. The way he looked at it, it wasn't like a vet looking at a sick animal. It was different, intense, almost clinical, curious. Dr. Allen started giving orders. "Sedation," she said. "Heavy sedation. We need to stabilize it for transport." She had a medical bag too, a much more advanced one than mine. She pulled out syringes, vials of stuff I'd never seen before. They started prepping the creature for sedation. It didn't resist. It didn't even flinch. It just let them do it. Like it knew what was coming, and it was resigned to it. Or maybe it was just too exhausted, too injured to fight. As they were working, I noticed something else. One of the firefighters on our crew, Lena, she was Native American, Navajo, I think. She was usually quiet, kept to herself, but she was watching the whole thing, her face pale. And then she did something completely unexpected. She walked towards the creature, slowly, deliberately. We all tensed up. "Lena, what are you doing?" Miller yelled. "Get back here, it's not safe." But she ignored him. She kept walking until she was right next to the creature. She knelt down, gently reached out and touched its head, right between its eyes on that strange, elongated skull. And the creature, it reacted. It shifted ever so slightly, and it made a sound. Not a groan this time, more like a whimper, a soft, almost human whimper. And it turned its head towards Lena, those big, sad eyes focusing on her face. Lena started speaking to it softly, in Navajo. I didn't understand the words, but the tone, it was gentle, soothing, like she was talking to a frightened child, and the creature, it seemed to calm down. Its breathing slowed, its body relaxed, just a little. Dr. Allen and Vargas exchanged glances. Vargas tilted his head, studying Lena and the creature with that unnerving clinical gaze. Dr. Allen just shook her head slightly, as if dismissing it. They finished sedating the creature, and it started to go limp. They brought over a stretcher, a heavy-duty one, not something you'd use for a human, bigger, reinforced. Even with 6 of us, it was a struggle to lift the creature onto the stretcher. It was incredibly heavy, dense, not just fur and bone. There was mass there, muscle maybe, or something else. They wrestled the stretcher into the back of the utility truck. The whole thing was done with this strange efficiency, almost surgical. No wasted movements, no unnecessary words. It was like they'd done this before, many times before. Once the creature was loaded, the men in suits closed the back of the truck, secured it, and then they just left. SUV in the lead, utility truck following, disappearing back the way they came, into the smoke and the dying sunlight. Dr. Allen and Vargas got back in the SUV, gave us a curt nod, and they were gone too. Just like that. We stood there, in the middle of the burnt landscape, surrounded by the roaring fire, covered in soot and sweat, staring at the empty space where the utility truck had been. The silence after they left was deafening, broken only by the crackle of the flames. Miller finally spoke, his voice low and shaky. What the hell was that?" Nobody answered. We were all still trying to wrap our heads around it. What we had just seen, what we had just helped to capture, recover. I didn't even know what to call it. That night back at base camp, we were called in for a debriefing. The same men in suits were there, waiting for us in a makeshift conference room. They were stern. No bullshit. They looked us each in the eye, and they told us, very clearly, that what we had seen today never happened. That the injured animal we assisted was a severely burned bear, and that any further discussion of anything else would be met with severe consequences. They used words like national security, classified information, breach of contract. The message was clear: shut up or else. We were all intimidated, scared even. These guys weren't messing around, and we all knew the drill. Government work, classified stuff, you see things, you hear things, you forget them. That's the rule. But I can't forget this. I can't shake it. The size of it, the eyes, the groans, the way it looked at Lena, the weird doctors, the secrecy, the threats. It all just keeps replaying in my head. It wasn't a bear. I know bears. We all know bears. This was something else, something intelligent, something almost human, but not human. And the way they took it away, like it was routine, like they'd done it before, like they had procedures in place for dealing with whatever that thing was. What the hell is going on? What did we find out there in the fire? And where did they take it? What are they going to do to it? I keep thinking about its eyes, those sad, resigned eyes, and Lena speaking to it in Navajo. What did she say? Did she know what it was? Did she understand something that we didn't? I don't know. I have no answers. All I have are questions and this sick, uneasy feeling in my gut. Like I've stumbled onto something huge, something terrifying, and now I'm stuck with it. This secret I can't tell anyone, this image I can't erase from my mind. I'm putting this out there because I don't know why exactly. Maybe just to see if anyone else has seen anything similar. Anything that makes any goddamn sense of this. Because right now, it feels like the world tilted on its axis that day in Nevada, and I'm the only one who noticed. And I'm scared of what else is out there that we're not supposed to see. Story 9. Man, that heat. You couldn't even imagine unless you've been there. Vietnam jungle heat, it's like being wrapped in a wet blanket that's been simmering on a stove all day. We were with the 101st Airborne, a 6-man unit led by Sergeant Calloway, a guy who looked like he'd seen it all, done it all, and probably forgotten more than I ever knew in the first place. We were dragging ourselves through the mountains, somewhere near this place they called Jade Mountain. My legs were screaming, my back was soaked, and my head was pounding, but you couldn't let your guard down for a second, not out there. Charlie was everywhere, or nowhere, which was sometimes worse. We finally found this little clearing, just enough space to drop our packs and catch our breath. Calloway called a halt. "Rest up, but keep your eyes peeled," he growled, like it needed saying. We all knew the drill. Even dog-tired, you were always looking, always listening. You had to be. We were settling down, trying to get comfortable on the damp ground, drinking from our canteens when it started. At first, it was just a rustle, like maybe a big animal moving through the underbrush uphill from us, 15 yards uphill, tops. But then the trees started to shake. Not like wind shake, not natural, violently, branches whipping around like they were being thrashed, leaves going nuts. Everyone froze. Heart rates through the roof instantly. Viet Cong ambush. That's the only thing that went through my head. My hand went straight to my rifle, safety off. Everyone else was the same, rifles up, scanning the tree line. Adrenaline was pumping so hard I could taste it. We were waiting for the first shot, the first grenade, something, but it never came. The shaking just kept getting worse. It was like something huge was tearing through the trees, but we couldn't see anything solid, just this insane, violent shaking. Then branches started snapping, loud cracks that echoed through the jungle. Whatever was up there was big, and it was pissed off. And then it emerged. Not like an animal bursting out, more like peeling itself out. The shaking stopped right where this thing started to appear. First, it was just a shape in the foliage, something dark and undefined. Then, this head. It was long, longer than any head I'd ever seen, not human, not animal I knew. And the hair, reddish hair, kind of matted and greasy looking, covering the top of its head, sticking out in clumps. My breath hitched. I swear to God everyone's did. We were trained for Charlie, for ambushes, for booby traps, for everything the goddamn jungle could throw at us. But not this. This was something else entirely. And the mouth, Jesus, it was huge, stretched almost the entire width of that head. And the eyes, they were dark, so dark they were like holes punched into its face, cavernous. They locked onto us immediately like spotlights. It wasn't anger in those eyes or hunger. It was something else, cold, like staring into a void. It pulled itself further out. The rest of its body came into view, about 5 feet tall, maybe a bit more, covered in that same reddish matted hair. It was built solid, muscular, but not bulky like a bear, more lean muscle. And it stood upright, not hunched over, not like it was ready to spring, straight up, like a man, but so wrong. It just stood there, staring at us, all six of us, rifles raised, hearts hammering, completely speechless. We were trained to react, to shoot, to move, but nobody moved, nobody shot. We were paralyzed. It wasn't aggressive, not in the way a wild animal is aggressive. It was evaluating us, like it was studying us, trying to figure us out, looking at us like we were specimens under a microscope. I remember someone whispering, barely audible, "What the hell? Is that an orangutan?" Another guy, Jenkins, stammered, "Orangutans ain't in Vietnam, are they?" Someone else, "Gorilla? But the hair." Whispers broke out, hushed, panicked, trying to make sense of something that made no sense. We were soldiers, trained to identify threats, to classify, to categorize. But this was outside any category we knew. It was like something out of a nightmare, standing right there in broad daylight. Sergeant Calloway, even he looked shaken, but he kept his rifle steady. His voice, when he spoke, was low and rough, but steady. "Hold your fire. Hold your goddamn fire. Don't provoke it." Provoke it? We were all frozen solid, rifles pointed, scared shitless. We weren't provoking anything. We were just trying to survive this encounter. The arguments and whispers died down. The creature just stood there, unmoving. Those dark eyes locked on us, one by one it seemed. It took its time, like it had all the time in the world. It would look at one of us, hold our gaze for what felt like forever, then slowly move its head and stare at the next. It was unnerving, beyond unnerving. It felt like it was seeing right through us, like it was peeling back our skin and looking inside. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it lost interest. I swear to God, it looked bored. It just turned its head away from us, slowly, deliberately, like we weren't even worth its time anymore, like we were just ants on the ground. It turned not quickly, no sudden movements, just a slow, deliberate turn, and then it just stepped back into the undergrowth. No crashing, no rustling, nothing. It was there, and then it wasn't. Gone. Just like that. Like it had evaporated. The silence after it vanished was deafening. The jungle noises, the birds, the insects, everything seemed to stop for a second, then slowly, tentatively, start back up again. We were still standing there, rifles raised, staring at the spot where it had been, the trees now still, the leaves no longer shaking. Nobody spoke for a long time. We just stood there, breathing heavily, hearts still pounding, trying to process what we had just seen. It felt like time had warped, stretched and twisted, like we'd been standing there for hours, facing that thing. Calloway finally lowered his rifle, slowly. The rest of us followed, like puppets on strings. He ran a hand over his face, took a deep breath. Did anyone get a good look at that thing?" he asked, his voice hoarse. We all just nodded dumbly. What the hell was it?" Jenkins whispered again. His face was pale as death. Nobody had an answer. I don't know," Calloway admitted, and I don't think I'd ever heard him sound so unsure. "I don't have a goddamn clue." We stood there for another long minute, just staring at the trees. The jungle felt different now. It wasn't just hot and dangerous anymore. It felt watched, like there were eyes all around us, unseen, silent watchers. We'd been scared of Charlie, of ambushes, of dying in the jungle. But that was a fear we understood. This was something else, something primal, something that burrowed under your skin and stayed there. Calloway finally shook his head, like he was trying to clear it. "All right," he said, his voice regaining some of its usual edge. "All right, listen up. We keep our mouths shut about this. You understand me? Shut. Fucking shut. No one needs to hear about this. They'll think we've all gone jungle mad." He was right. Who would believe us? A 5-foot-tall, reddish-haired thing with a huge mouth and eyes like black holes in the middle of the Vietnamese jungle? We'd be laughed out of the division, or worse, sent for psychiatric evaluations. We saw a wild animal, Calloway continued, his voice firming up. A monkey. Yeah, a big monkey. That's what we saw. We got spooked. End of story. You got it? We all nodded again, slowly. Monkey. Yeah, right. Like we were all stupid enough to mistake that thing for a monkey. But we understood. We weren't going to talk about it. Not to anyone. We packed up our gear, moving in silence now, the easy camaraderie of earlier gone, replaced by a heavy, unspoken dread. The hike felt different too. Every rustle, every shadow, every strange sound made us jump. We were jumpy before, always on edge, but now it was different. It was like we were waiting for it to reappear, to watch us again. We moved out of that clearing and didn't stop until it was almost dark, putting as much distance as we could between ourselves and Jade Mountain. We didn't talk about it that night around the campfire. We didn't talk about it the next day or the day after. We just didn't talk about it. Ever. But it stayed with us. I know it did. I could see it in their eyes, just like I knew it was etched into mine. That thing, whatever it was real. We all saw it, and we knew deep down that it wasn't just some weird animal. It was something older, something that didn't belong, something that watched us from the shadows of the jungle and probably still does to this day. I left Vietnam a few months later, came home, tried to get back to normal. But things were never really normal again after that. I tried to forget about it, pushed it down, told myself it was the heat, the stress, whatever. But every now and then, late at night when everything is quiet, I see those eyes again, those dark, empty eyes, staring at me. And I know I saw something out there that day, something that shouldn't exist. And I know, for damn sure, it saw us too, and I still have no idea what it was or what it wanted. And that's the part that really gets to you, even now. The not knowing. The absolute terrifying mystery of it all. Just gone. Left us standing there shaking with a fear that went deeper than anything Charlie ever put into us. And that silence after it left. That was the loudest silence I've ever heard in my life. I can still hear it sometimes. Just the silence and those eyes, that's all. Story 10. Look, I don't usually talk about this stuff, especially not online, but I saw some thread, something about weird encounters in the jungle, and it brought it all back. Viper's Peak. Jesus, just saying the name still makes the hairs on my arms stand up. We called it Monkey Mountain after, though never to the captain's face. Captain Sterling. Ironclad Sterling, they called him. Man was all spit and polish, protocol down to his goddamn fingernails. He was convinced we were sitting on a hot spot. And he was right, in a way that none of us could have imagined. It was 66 Quang Ninh Province, Hill 868, middle of nowhere. Felt like the edge of the world. Strategic position, they said. Bullshit. It was just another miserable bug-infested hill that smelled like rot and fear. We were Charlie Company, dug in good, or as good as you could dig into that red clay. Always humid, always that stink in the air. We'd been hearing whispers for days, movement in the brush more than usual, felt like eyes on us all the time. You get that feeling out there, like you're being watched by something that ain't human. And it was building. You could feel it in the air. That day started like any other. Sweltering heat by 8 a.m., the jungle alive with the drone of insects, the occasional far-off sound of artillery. We were jumpy, expecting contact. VC activity had been picking up. Intelligence said they were pushing closer to our perimeter. Sterling was on edge, pacing the command bunker, chewing his lip raw. He was a stickler for procedure, even when procedure felt like it was going to get us killed. That day, it almost did. Around midday, Sergeant Miller, he was on point that day, radioed in. Static crackled on the line, then his voice, tight, strained. "Sir, movement. Heavy movement. South perimeter. Definitely more than recon. Sounds big, sir." Sterling grabbed the radio like it was a snake about to bite him. "Confirm visual, Sergeant. Are we talking Victor Charlie?" "Negative visual yet, sir. Brush too thick. But it's loud. Like a whole damn company moving through there, and something else. I don't know, sir. Just feels wrong." Wrong. That was the word. Wrong. It was the feeling we all had. It wasn't the familiar rustle of jungle animals or even the calculated movements of VC patrols. This was different. Heavier, clumsier, but powerful. And there was a sound. Low, guttural, like growling, but deeper, and screeching, like monkeys, but amplified, distorted, like something ripped from a nightmare. Sterling, being Sterling, still wanted visual confirmation. "Maintain position, Sergeant. Hold fire. I want eyes on before we light this place up. Could be villagers caught in the crossfire." Villagers? In that goddamn patch of hell? Yeah, right. Miller sounded like he was about to piss his pants. "Sir, with respect, it ain't villagers. Whatever it is, it's big, and it ain't friendly." Sterling barked into the radio. "Sergeant, follow protocol. Hold your position and observe. That's an order." Then it started. Not gunfire. Not at first. Rocks. Jesus Christ, rocks. Big rocks. Boom-sized rocks, sailing out of the tree line. Whizzing through the air, cracking through the branches, slamming into our sandbags, our bunkers. The ground vibrated with the impact. We scrambled, helmets on, diving for cover, yelling at each other, confused as hell. "Incoming! Incoming!" Guys were screaming. "Mortars! No! Too erratic!" The rocks kept coming. Faster now, a barrage. And the screeching. It was deafening now. A chorus of rage and fury echoing from the jungle wall. It wasn't human. No way in hell was that human. Sterling was yelling into the radio again, his voice rising, cracking. "Miller, report! What the hell is going on out there?" Miller's voice was almost a scream now, barely intelligible through the static and the screeching. "Sir, they're apes, sir. Goddamn apes! Big ones! Hairy! They're throwing rocks! They're coming out of the trees!" Apes? Rock apes? We'd heard stories. Whispers from the locals, crazy tales about creatures in the deep jungle. We'd dismissed it as jungle fever, local myths. Bullshit to scare kids. Until that moment. Then I saw them. They broke cover, crashing through the undergrowth, ripping apart the foliage. Not VC, not human. Monsters. That's the only word for it. Monsters. Huge, hairy things walking upright, but different. Like nothing I'd ever seen, nothing I could even imagine. Covered in thick, matted fur, faces flat and brutal, teeth bared in snarls. Eyes like black holes, filled with pure animal rage. And they were big, bigger than any man, towering over us, muscles bulging under that fur. They were coming at us like a goddamn tide, hundreds of them, screeching, howling, pounding their chests with fists the size of dinner plates, and they were throwing rocks, not just dropping them, throwing them with force, with accuracy, like they knew what they were doing. Sterling, bless his rigid, protocol-obsessed heart, still hadn't given the order to fire. He was stuck in some insane loop of denial, trying to make sense of something that defied all logic. He grabbed a megaphone, actually grabbed a goddamn megaphone, and started yelling at them, yelling at these things. "Hold your fire, Marines, hold your fire. These are animals. We can scare them off. Throw rocks back. Drive them back into the jungle. Throw rocks back, drive them back. These were not squirrels we were dealing with. These were beasts, enraged and charging, and they were tearing our perimeter apart. But orders were orders, Sterling's orders. So some of the guys, the ones closest to the front, started picking up rocks, the smaller ones at least, and weakly lobbing them back. like trying to fight a charging tank with pebbles. The apes didn't even flinch. They just roared louder, the screeching reaching a fever pitch. The rock barrage intensified. They were throwing bigger rocks now, boulders almost, with terrifying strength. They were hitting our positions, smashing sandbags, splintering wood, sending dirt and debris flying. One rock, the size of a goddamn watermelon, landed right next to me, burying itself in the ground, sending a shockwave through my chest. My ears rang, dust filled my mouth. I tasted blood, and I was just lucky. Private Davis, poor bastard, took one of those rocks square in the chest. Didn't even scream, just gone. That's when it broke. That's when the fear turned to pure, unadulterated terror, and the chaos exploded. Sergeant Miller, bless his soul, finally lost it. He screamed into the radio, "Permission to fire, sir! Permission to fire! They're killing us! These ain't animals, sir! They're monsters! For Christ's sake, let us fire!" But Sterling, he was still babbling into the megaphone. "Stand your ground! Hold the line! We will not fire unless fired upon! We will—" Then a rock, a massive chunk of granite, sailed through the air and took out the megaphone clean out of his hand, shattered it into pieces, sent fragments flying. Sterling stared at his empty hand, his face pale as death. For a moment, just a split second, I think I saw doubt flicker in his eyes. Then the rage took over again, but now it was mixed with something else, something like fear. "Hold your fire!" I said, "Hold your—" But his voice was drowned out by the roar of the apes, the screeching, and now, finally, the sound of gunfire. Sergeant Miller, God love him, had taken matters into his own hands. He'd ordered his squad to open fire, and thank God he did. The M16s barked, the M60s chattered, the jungle erupted in a hail of lead. Tracer rounds ripped through the air, lighting up the advancing wave of apes. They were tearing through the brush, coming on, relentless. But the gunfire, it slowed them. You could see them stagger, roar in pain, fall. But they kept coming. They were so many, like a goddamn nightmare come to life. The battle became a blur of noise and motion, of fear and adrenaline. Screams, roars, the relentless chatter of machine guns, the impact of rocks, the smell of gunpowder and blood, and something else. Something musky, animalistic, thick in the air. It was hand-to-hand combat, a goddamn melee. Apes were swarming our positions, tearing at the sandbags, clawing at the bunkers. Marines were firing point blank, clubbing them with rifle butts, wrestling with them in the mud and dirt. I saw Corporal Henderson get dragged out of his foxhole by one of those things. It lifted him like he was a rag doll, screaming, kicking, then— silence, just the sickening crunch of bone. I was firing, emptying magazines, reloading, firing again. Didn't even aim, just pointed and sprayed, trying to keep them back. One of them, huge, fur matted with mud and blood, its eyes blazing, charged right at me. I fired point blank, rounds slamming into its chest, but it kept coming. It swatted my rifle away like it was a toy, its massive hand wrapping around my throat. I felt its breath on my face, hot, foul, like rotten meat. Its teeth inches from my face. I was staring into those black, soulless eyes, waiting for it to end. Then, a shot, loud, deafening, right next to my ear. The ape roared, its grip loosening. It stumbled back, clutching its face, blood gushing from its eye. Sergeant Miller, he'd blown its eye out with his shotgun. He hauled me to my feet, yelling, "Get your ass back in the fight, Rodriguez. They ain't gonna kill us today." We fought like animals ourselves. We had to. It was survival. It wasn't war anymore. It was just raw, desperate survival. The sun started to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the battlefield. The screeching and roaring seemed to intensify with the darkness, echoing through the hills, bouncing off the jungle walls. It felt like the whole world was closing in on us, suffocating us in fear and blood. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The rock barrage ceased, the screeching faded. The apes, they just vanished, fell back into the jungle, melted away into the darkness, leaving behind silence. A heavy, oppressive silence, broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors, the crackle of burning wood and the distant drone of insects, which now sounded almost normal. Normal after that hell. Impossible. We were huddled in our positions, shaking, bleeding, covered in dirt and gore, afraid to even move, afraid they'd come back. The radio crackled again. It was headquarters. They'd heard the reports, the screams, the gunfire. They were sending reinforcements, choppers inbound, asking for a sitrep, a situation report. What the hell were we supposed to report? Sterling. He was just standing there, staring out at the jungle, at the darkness where the apes had been. His face was blank, devoid of emotion. He looked broken. The ironclad captain cracked open. Sergeant Miller took charge, organizing the wounded, counting the dead. The choppers arrived at dawn. The reinforcements swarmed the hill, bewildered, shocked by the scene they found. They saw the injured Marines, the shattered defenses, the blood, and the bodies. Apes, scattered amongst our fallen, their massive, hairy corpses grotesque in the morning light. They'd never seen anything like it. Nobody had. They took the wounded, the dead, what was left of Charlie Company, off that hill, Viper's Peak. They left behind Monkey Mountain. We never went back. They sealed it off, declared it a no-go zone, something about unexploded ordnance. Bullshit. They just wanted to bury it, forget it ever happened. We tried to tell people, tried to explain, but who would believe us? Rock apes? Monsters? In Vietnam? They looked at us like we were crazy, jungle-mad PTSD cases. Maybe we were, maybe we are. I still see them sometimes, in my dreams, those black eyes, that screeching roar, and that smell, that sickening animal stink. It stays with you, Monkey Mountain, Viper's Peak, whatever you want to call it. It's just cursed ground. And I was there. I survived. But part of me never really left that hill. And I don't think I ever will. Story 11. We were a special forces team, doing recon deep in Indian country. Our sergeant Cutter, we called him Shadow. Hard as nails, didn't say much, but you trusted him with your life. And that's saying something, because out there, your life felt like it was on loan anyway. We were operating near this village, Lang Co, Phantom Village they called it. Wasn't on any maps. Locals steered clear of it, said bad things happened there. Naturally, that's where they sent us. The first couple of nights were quiet, jungle quiet, which is never really quiet, right? Bugs buzzing, animals rustling, the wind in the leaves. Normal jungle noise. Then came the sound. The first night it was just a whisper, something low, distant, like a clogged drain gargling, guttural, wet and wrong. It was beneath all the normal jungle sounds, a low thrum you felt more than heard. We all froze when we first picked it up, looked at each other, trying to pinpoint it. But it was like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Cutter just held up a hand, told us to stay sharp, keep listening. We thought maybe it was some animal call we hadn't heard before. Jungles full of weird noises, we figured, tried to write it off. But the second night, it was louder, closer. Still that same low, gurgling sound, but this time it had weight to it, like something big making the sound. It echoed through the trees, carried on the humid air. You could feel it vibrate in your chest. We were all on edge. Every snap of a twig, every rustle in the undergrowth made us jump. Sleep was light, broken. We were rotating watches as always, but nobody could really relax. Even Cutter, who was usually a statue, you could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he'd scan the tree line, his hand always near his rifle. By the third night, it was like the sound was right on top of us. It felt like it was circling our position, moving through the jungle, getting closer, then further away, then closer again. It wasn't constant. It would come in pulses, these deep, resonant gurgles that seemed to shake the ground. It was unsettling, more than unsettling. It was disturbing. We were all talking about it in hushed voices now, between watches. The radio crackled with static and occasional clipped reports from command, but we didn't say anything about the sound. What were we going to say? "Hey, command, we're hearing weird gargling noises in the jungle. Think we need to abort mission?" Nah. We were there to do a job. And honestly, there was this morbid curiosity mixed in with the fear. What the hell was that sound? Nobody had heard anything like it before, and we'd heard a lot of messed up sounds in that goddamn jungle. Fourth night, the air was thick, even thicker than usual. Felt like you were breathing soup. The moon was hidden behind clouds, the jungle black as pitch. And the sound started again, right on cue, as if some giant thing in the dark was clearing its throat. But this time, it was different. It wasn't just a gurgle. There was something else layered in with it. A wet, tearing sound. Like flesh ripping, followed by a heavy thud. Then silence. A heavy, oppressive silence that was worse than the sound. "Cutter," he just snapped. Not like losing it, but he was done with waiting. He grabbed his M16, signaled us to gear up. "We're finding out what the hell is making that noise," he hissed, his voice low and tight. We didn't need telling twice. Whatever was out there making that sound, whatever had been ripping and thudding, it was close, too close. And the silence after, it felt predatory, like something was waiting in the dark. We moved out slow, careful. Cutter in the lead, me right behind him, then Diaz, Johnson and Miller bringing up the rear. We moved in a tight diamond formation, rifles raised, safeties off. Every step crunched on leaves, every breath seemed too loud. The jungle was holding its breath with us. We moved towards the direction of the sound, or at least where we thought it had come from. It was hard to tell in that dense foliage. The sound seemed to bounce off the trees, distort in the humid air. And then the smell hit us. First, it was just a faint whiff, carried on the still air. Sweet and rotten like decaying meat. But as we pushed further in, it got stronger, thicker, until it was almost gagging. It clung to the back of your throat, made your eyes water. We knew then, whatever was making that sound, whatever we were heading towards, it was dead or dying. We pushed through a tangle of vines, and suddenly we were in a small clearing. Moonlight filtered weakly through the clouds, enough to see something that made my stomach flip and my blood run cold. In the center of the clearing, lying amongst the ferns and moss, was it. Just the upper half of it, ripped clean in half, right at the waist, like some giant had taken a bite out of it, or exploded it. The edges of the tear were ragged, black with rot and crawling with flies, and the smell, Jesus, the smell was a physical thing pressing down on you, making you want to vomit. It was ape-like, massive. The torso was thick, muscled, even in decay. The fur was matted, dark brown, almost black, in places ripped away to show skin that was pale, greyish-green and human-like. But not human. Definitely not human. Too big. Way too big. The head was huge, even ripped off at the neck like that. Flat, broad face, pushed in, like a gorilla's, but different. The eyes, or what was left of them. They were sunken deep into the sockets, just dark, empty holes staring up at the sky. They seemed to see right through you, even empty. The nose was flattened, nostrils wide. And the mouth, that's what really got to me. It was slightly open, teeth bared in a silent snarl of death. And the teeth, they were all wrong. Flat molars, big like grinding stones, but mixed in with them, long, pointed canines like a predator, like something that ripped and tore flesh. The arms were long, unbelievably long. Even truncated at the shoulder, they stretched out across the clearing, ending in massive hands. Hands with fingers that were too long, too thin, almost skeletal. The fingernails were thick, yellowed like claws. And the skin on the hands, it wasn't furred, it was wrinkled, almost like human skin, but tougher, thicker. We just stood there, frozen, staring at this thing. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? It was monstrous, something out of a nightmare, and real, terribly, horribly real. Cutter was the first to move. He circled the remains, rifle still raised, scanning the tree line, like expecting something to jump out. Diaz and Johnson moved closer, cautiously, their faces pale in the moonlight. Miller stayed back near me, looking like he was about to pass out. "Landmine?" Diaz whispered, his voice hoarse. "Maybe stepped on a landmine." Cutter shook his head slowly. "No, look at it." He gestured with his rifle barrel at the mangled torso. "Ripped apart, not blown up. Ripped." He was right. The edges of the wound were torn, shredded, not the clean, jagged break of an explosion. It looked like it had been pulled apart by brute force. Incredible, monstrous force. "Maybe animal attack?" Johnson ventured, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Big cat? Tiger?" "Tiger ain't doing this," Cutter said flatly. "Nothing in this jungle does this. Look at the size of it, Diaz. Estimate." Diaz, who was good with measurements, squatted down, examining the torso, pacing it off. "From here to the shoulders, say about 6 feet, maybe 7. If it was whole, 8 feet easy." 8 feet. 8 feet of... what? Ape-like thing, with human features ripped in half, in the middle of nowhere, making that gurgling sound. The sound, I finally managed to croak out. The gurgling, you think, its mate? The thought hung in the air, heavy as the smell of decay. A mate, mourning, making that sound for 3 nights, echoing through the jungle. A mourning mate for this thing, whatever it was. The silence descended again, broken only by the buzz of insects and the distant drip of water. We stood there, staring at the monstrous remains, the jungle pressing in around us, the weight of the unknown crushing us. Cutter finally spoke, his voice low, grave. "We report this, radio it in, let Command deal with it." But even as he said it, we all knew Command wouldn't deal with it. They'd write it off as some hallucination, jungle fever, stress. They wouldn't want to know, wouldn't want to believe. Because if they believed, if they admitted there was something like this out here, something huge and unknown and ripped apart by something even worse, then what else was out there in the dark? What else was lurking in the unexplored depths of this godforsaken jungle? We radioed in, kept it vague, reported finding something unusual, something that needed investigating. Didn't mention the size, didn't mention the human features, just said we found remains. They told us to secure the area, wait for extraction at dawn. Dawn felt like it took forever to come. We stayed in the clearing, circling the remains, watches rotating, rifles never lowered. The silence was thick, heavy with unspoken dread. We kept expecting to hear that gurgling sound again, but it never came. Maybe its mate, if it even had a mate, had gone silent in its own grief. Or maybe it was out there, in the dark, watching us. When the chopper finally came, the first rays of sun just breaking through the trees, we loaded up the remains. As much as we could. Just the torso, the head, the arms. Couldn't lift the whole thing. It was too heavy, too monstrous. The stench clung to us, to the chopper, to everything. I swear I could still smell it for days afterwards. Back at base, they looked at us like we were crazy. The officers, the doctors, they examined the remains, their faces getting paler and paler. Whispered conferences behind closed doors. Classified, top secret, need-to-know basis. We were debriefed, told to forget what we'd seen, told it was animal unknown species, jungle anomaly. Don't talk about it, ever. They shipped the remains off somewhere, some lab, some research facility, I don't know. Don't want to know. Never heard anything about it again. Official story? Nothing happened, nothing at Lang Co, just another routine recon mission. But I know what I saw. We all saw it. That thing in the clearing. Ripped in half, smelling of death and jungle rot. The sunken eyes staring into nothing, the teeth, the mix of predator and herbivore, the sheer size of it, and the sound, that low, guttural, gurgling sound. I still hear it sometimes, in my dreams. When it rains hard and the drains back up, when the wind howls through the trees, that sound and the silence that followed it. The silence of something waiting in the dark. To this day, I have no idea what that thing was, what ripped it apart, or what, if anything, is still out there, in the deep, dark heart of the jungle. Sometimes I think about that phantom village, Lang Ko, and I wonder if maybe it wasn't the Viet Cong they were afraid of. Maybe they were afraid of something else, something that gurgles in the night and tears giants apart like they're nothing. Whatever it was, whatever is still out there, I hope to God I never hear that sound again, never see anything like that again. Some things are better left buried in the jungle, forgotten, but they never really leave you, do they? They stay with you, buried deep in your mind, like the stench of decay that lingers in the air long after the thing itself is gone. And every now and then, in the quiet moments, in the dead of night, you remember, and you listen, and you wait. Just in case you hear that sound again, just in case it comes back. Story 12. Every night out there was bad, let's just be honest. You never really slept, just sort of dozed with one ear open, listening for the mortars, listening for the VC, listening for anything that meant tonight was going to be the night they decided to come have a party at our expense. But this night had a different kind of edge to it. It wasn't the usual jumpy tension, it was heavier, like something was pressing down on you, something you couldn't see or touch but could definitely feel in your gut. We'd been hearing noises from outside the wire all night, starting not long after sundown, not firefight noises, not explosions or shouts or anything like that, just rustling, heavy rustling, like something big moving through the undergrowth. At first, we figured it was just animals, jungles full of critters, right? Monkeys, wild pigs, God knows what else. But this was different. This was louder, more insistent, and it was moving around the perimeter, not just in one spot. It was like something was circling us, testing the fences. Everyone was on edge. Even the lifers were looking jumpy, and those guys had seen everything. Sergeant Miller, our squad leader, he tried to play it cool, said it was probably just the wind. Wind. There wasn't any breeze. The air was still as death. You could feel the humidity just hanging there, thick and wet. Nobody bought it. Nobody said anything. But you could see it in their eyes. They were feeling it too, that wrongness. Then the noises got closer, closer to the wire. Heavy snapping of branches. That rustling got louder, like something was dragging itself through the thick stuff. And then a sound I couldn't place at first, a kind of snuffling, like an animal breathing heavy, close by. It wasn't like any animal I knew back home in California, that's for sure. This was deeper, rougher, more guttural. That's when Captain Thompson, he calls over the radio from the command bunker. He's got his fancy radio up there, the PRC-25, in that little concrete box on top of the hill, overlooking everything. He says he's been hearing it up there too, clearer than down in the camp. He wants someone to check it out, see what's causing the commotion. Nobody moves, nobody volunteers. Who the hell wants to go strolling outside the wire in the middle of a night like this? VC could be anywhere, could be setting up to hit us, and now there's whatever the hell this is out there too. I don't know what got into me. Maybe I was just too young and dumb to know better, or maybe it was the tequila we'd snuck from the PX earlier kicking in, but I raised my hand. "I'll go, Sarge," I said. Stupid, I know, looking back. Pure dumbass gung-ho. Miller gives me this look, like he's trying to decide if I'm crazy or just incredibly stupid. He sighs, rubs his hand over his face, and then nods. "All right, Sanchez," he says. "You and Jackson go. Take your M16s, plenty of ammo, stay inside the wire, check the perimeter around the comm bunker, and for Christ's sake, be careful." Jackson was a lanky kid from Georgia, quiet type. He didn't say anything, just grabbed his rifle and gave me a look that said, You volunteered us for this, didn't you, you idiot? We both grabbed our helmets, checked our rifles, and headed for the gate. The moment we stepped out of the circle of light from the camp, it was like walking into a black hole. The moon was hiding behind clouds, and the jungle was just black. Thick black, like ink. Even with our flashlights, it felt like we were walking blind. The air outside the wire was even heavier, smelled like damp earth and something else. Something musky, wild. We moved slowly, keeping close to the wire, rifles raised. Jackson was on point, me right behind him. Every shadow looked like a VC, every rustle of leaves made you jump. We followed the wire up the small rise to the comm bunker. The ground was uneven, roots and rocks everywhere, and it was darker than hell under the trees. As we got closer to the bunker, I could hear it clearer, the snuffling sound. It was coming from the bushes, right at the edge of the cleared area around the bunker, maybe 20, 30 yards away. It was definitely moving, and it was definitely big. Not pig big, bigger. Something heavy, crashing through the undergrowth, but quieter than you'd expect for something that size. Almost like it was trying to be quiet, but wasn't very good at it. We stopped, flattened ourselves against the wire, trying to see into the darkness. Jackson whispered, "What the hell is that?" I shook my head, couldn't answer him. I didn't know, but my gut was telling me this was bad, really bad. Captain Thompson's voice crackled over the bunker's loudspeaker, suddenly loud in the silence. "You boys out there? See anything?" Jackson keyed his radio. "Negative, Captain. Just hearing some animal noises near the perimeter. Checking it out now." His voice was tight, nervous. I could feel the tension radiating off him. We started moving again, inching closer to the bushes. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead, even in the humid night air. I flipped the safety off my rifle, thumb on the trigger. Jackson did the same. We were both scared shitless, I won't lie. We got to a spot where we had a slightly better view. I aimed my flashlight at the bushes, just a tangle of thick, dark green leaves in the beam. Nothing moving. "See anything?" Jackson whispered again. "No," I whispered back. "Maybe it's gone." Hopeful, but I didn't believe it. It was still there. I could feel it. We stood there for a second, listening, trying to pierce the darkness with our flashlights and our eyes. Nothing but the crickets chirping and the heavy silence of the jungle pressing in. I was about to tell Jackson we should head back to camp, tell the captain we didn't see anything, when I saw it. Just a shape, darker than the dark around it, near the base of the bushes, sort of hunched over. It looked like a bush, an unusually shaped bush, maybe a bit too rounded, too solid-looking for a bush. But in the dark, in the shadows, it was easy to mistake it for part of the foliage. "Hold on," I said to Jackson, raising my rifle again. "I see something, by those bushes." I moved the flashlight beam closer, focused it right on the shape. And as the light hit it, as the shadows peeled back, I saw it wasn't a bush. It was something else. It was big. Taller than a man, I think, but hunched over, so it was hard to tell for sure. Covered in fur. Dark, matted fur, and it had a face, kind of. Not human, not animal exactly, but something in between. Flat nose, heavy brow ridge, small, beady eyes that reflected the flashlight beam for a split second like tiny red embers. It was crouched down, maybe sniffing the ground or rooting around in the dirt, and it hadn't seen us yet. It was just there, in the light. I froze. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just stared at it, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing. What was that thing? Then it happened. The sound. It wasn't a snort. Snort doesn't even begin to cover it. It was more like a guttural expulsion of air, a loud, explosive ha-wah, like something massive clearing its lungs. It came from that thing, from that bush-shaped thing in the darkness. The sound hit me like a punch in the chest. It was so loud, so unexpected, so animalistic. It was pure, raw aggression, pure warning, and it was directed right at us. My brain short-circuited. Fear took over, primal, instinctual fear. All the training, all the briefings, everything just went out the window. All I knew was that there was something huge, something terrifying, right in front of me, making that awful sound. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. Something wrong. I didn't think. I just reacted. My finger tightened on the trigger, and I emptied half a magazine into that thing. Just instinctive reaction. Bang, 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 bang. The M16 bucking in my hands, muzzle flash lighting up the darkness, the roar of the rifle deafening in the stillness. Jackson screamed, "Poncho! What the hell?" The thing recoiled. It didn't scream, didn't yell, just made another of those awful snorting sounds, a deeper, angrier one this time. And it moved, fast. Disappeared back into the bushes, crashing away through the undergrowth, branches snapping, leaves rustling, getting fainter and fainter as it retreated into the jungle. Silence, except for the ringing in my ears and my own ragged breathing. Jackson was staring at me, eyes wide, face pale in the flashlight beam. You shot it! What the hell was that thing, Poncho?" I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. All I knew was that I'd been scared out of my mind, and I'd just fired my weapon at something in the dark, something that looked monstrous. Captain Thompson's voice boomed from the bunker speaker again, sharper this time, edged with anger. "Sanchez! Jackson! Report! What the hell is going on out there? We heard shots fired!" Jackson grabbed the radio, hands shaking. "Captain, we encountered something near the perimeter. Sanchez opened fire. It retreated into the jungle. We're okay. Coming back to camp now." We turned around and practically ran back down the hill to the camp, hearts still pounding, adrenaline pumping. Back inside the wire, the relative safety of the camp lights felt like heaven. Miller was waiting for us at the gate, face like thunder. "What the hell was that shooting, Sanchez?" he barked, grabbing my arm. "You think it's target practice out here?" I was still shaking, trying to catch my breath. "Sarge, we saw something out by the comm bunker. Big, hairy, made this awful noise. I thought it was VC. I panicked. I'm sorry. Pathetic, I know. Sounded like a kid who broke his mama's vase." Miller stared at me, then at Jackson, who just nodded, pale and silent. Miller sighed again, running a hand through his thinning hair. Okay. Report to the captain, now." Captain Thompson was even less happy than Miller. He was chewing on his cigar, pacing back and forth in front of the command tent, his face red. "Shooting on the perimeter? Sanchez, you want to explain yourself?" I stammered through my story, trying to describe what we'd seen, what I'd heard, what had happened. The shape, the fur, the snorting, the panic, the shooting. It sounded ridiculous even to my own ears, just some dumb kid freaking out at a noise in the dark. Thompson listened, face getting darker and darker. When I finished, he just stared at me for a long moment, then spat on the ground. "Sanchez, you're telling me you shot at what? A shadow? A figment of your imagination?" "No, sir, it was real, sir. Jackson saw it too. Right, Jackson?" I looked at Jackson, pleading for backup. Jackson mumbled, "Yeah, Captain, we saw something big, dark, and it made that noise. Poncho just reacted." Thompson glared at Jackson, then back at me. He clearly didn't believe a word of it. He thought we were seeing things, jumpy and trigger-happy, probably spooked by our own shadows. "Sanchez, you just wasted a bunch of ammo, probably scared off every animal for miles. And for what? A bush that snorted? Are you serious?" He practically spat the words. That's when someone else spoke up. Corporal Davis, one of the older guys, who'd been in Vietnam longer than anyone. He was leaning against a tent pole, listening to the whole thing, face calm, almost knowing. He looked at Thompson, then at me. "Captain," he said, his voice quiet, but everyone in the tent turned to look at him. Maybe it wasn't just a bush. Thompson frowned at Davis. "What are you talking about, Davis?" Davis just shrugged, his gaze steady. "Heard stories, Captain. Old-timers talk about them. Rock apes." Silence fell in the tent. Rock apes. The words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. I'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. Whispers and jokes about hairy wildmen in the jungle, big and strong, aggressive, sometimes seen near villages, sometimes near American patrols. Everyone just dismissed them as tall tales, jungle myths. But Thompson scoffed. "Rock apes? Davis, come on. You don't believe in that stuff, do you?" Davis just shrugged again, not taking his eyes off me. "Don't know, Captain. Never seen one myself. But heard stories about them being bold, not scared of people. And they make noises, weird noises." He paused, then added, looking straight at me, "Snorting noises?" A cold shiver went down my spine. Snorting noises. Just like what I'd heard, just like what I'd shot at. Thompson looked from Davis to me, then back to Davis, his face troubled. He didn't want to believe it, you could tell, but maybe, just maybe, there was something to it. He rubbed his chin, still chewing on his cigar. "Rock apes," he muttered again. "Christ. All right, Davis. You and Miller take a squad. Go check the perimeter in the morning. See if you can find anything. Tracks, anything. Sanchez, you're on latrine duty for a week. And think about what you did, wasting ammo like that. Could have been VC out there." He dismissed us with a wave of his hand. We went back to our hooch, Jackson and me. Nobody said anything for a long time. We just sat on our cots, staring into the darkness. The sounds from outside the wire seemed louder now, more menacing. Every rustle, every snap, every chirp sounded like something watching us. Finally, Jackson spoke, his voice barely a whisper. You think it was one of those rock apes, Poncho?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to believe it. It sounded crazy, impossible. Rock apes? Like something out of a Tarzan movie. But what else could it have been? It was big, it was dark, it was hairy, and it made that ungodly snorting sound. And Davis seemed to know something. The way he'd looked at me when he said snorting noises, it was like he knew. I shuddered, remembering the image of that shape in the flashlight beam, the hunched posture, the dark fur, the face, that flat nose, those beady red eyes, and that sound, that awful guttural snort. I don't know, Jackson, I said finally, my voice hoarse. I really don't know, but I don't think it was just a bush. Neither of us slept much that night. Every noise outside the wire made me jump. I kept seeing that thing in my mind, that shadowy, monstrous form snorting at me from the darkness. The image was burned into my brain. The next morning, Davis and Miller took their squad out to check the perimeter. I watched them go, feeling a sick knot in my stomach. Part of me hoped they wouldn't find anything. Part of me dreaded what they might find. They were gone for hours. When they came back, they looked grim. Miller went straight to Captain Thompson, and they went into the command tent and closed the flap. The rest of us just stood around, waiting, the tension thicker than the humidity. Finally, Miller came out of the tent, his face tight. He didn't say anything to us, just walked straight to his hooch and disappeared inside. Captain Thompson emerged a few minutes later, looking pale and shaken. He walked to the center of the camp, cleared his throat, and spoke, his voice strained. "All right, listen up," he said, looking at all of us. "Davis's squad. They found something outside the wire this morning. Tracks. Big tracks. Bigger than any animal we know of around here. And they found blood. Near the bushes by the comm bunker. Sanchez. They found blood where you said you shot." He paused, looked at me, his eyes filled with something. Not anger anymore. Something else. Fear, maybe. We don't know what it was, Sanchez, he said, his voice low. But maybe you weren't seeing things after all. He didn't say rock ape. He didn't have to. We all knew what he was talking about. And in that moment, the fear in the camp shifted. It wasn't just fear of the VC anymore. It was something older, something deeper, something wild, something that prowled in the jungle, in the darkness, watching us. They never said anything more about it. The official report, I guess, was that I'd fired at a large, unidentified animal. Latrine duty was my only real punishment. But things changed after that night. The noises outside the wire, they didn't sound just like animal noises anymore. They sounded like something else, something watching, something waiting. I rotated home a few months later, left Vietnam, left the jungle, left the fear behind, or so I thought. But even now, all these years later, sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, hearing that sound in my head, that guttural "how pfeff." And I see it again in the darkness, that hunched shape, those beady red eyes, that bush that wasn't a bush. And I know, deep down, that out there in the dark, in the places where people don't go, there are things we don't understand, things we can't explain, things that watch us from the shadows, and sometimes they snort, and that's when you know you're not alone, not at all. Story 13. All right, listen, I don't usually talk about this. Never really have, not properly. It's been too long, and yet it feels like yesterday sometimes, you know? Like it's still there, just out of sight. It's something that happened back in Ortwan, 1901. I was logging up north near Willow Creek. Back then, Willow Creek was even smaller, more cut off than it is now. Real backwoods country. And beyond Willow Creek, that was something else. We called it the Forbidden Plateau. See, I was a timberman, and a damn good one if I can say so myself. Spent years in the woods, knew my trees, knew the lay of the land, could smell a storm brewing a day off. I was hired to scout out timber tracks beyond Willow Creek up on the plateau. Good stands were getting harder to find closer in, and the company was getting antsy about new sources. Now, even getting to the edge of the plateau was a trek. But to go deep in, that was supposed to be my job. Thing is, the locals, the native guides I hired, good men, experienced, they went white as sheets when I mentioned going inland, onto the plateau proper. Said it was bad land. Spirits lived there. Wouldn't go within a mile of the place, let alone guide me through it. Whispered stories about wild things living back there. Monkey men, they called them. Just old wives' tales, I figured. Superstition and whatnot. I'd heard whispers myself over the years, logging camps being what they were, but always wrote it off as bunk. I'm not a man who scares easy. Been in the woods alone in worse conditions, faced down bears, been lost in blizzards. So I told them I'd go it alone, pay them for getting me to the edge of the plateau, and I'd handle the rest myself. They were uneasy about that too, but they took my money, figuring I was a fool heading for my own doom. Dropped me off at the base of the escarpment, practically ran back to Willow Creek. Didn't even wave goodbye, just turned and bolted. That should have been my first clue, right? But I was young, full of piss and vinegar, thought I knew better than everyone. The first day was just tough going. The plateau wasn't flat like the name suggested. It was a tangle of thick forest, rocky outcrops, steep ravines. The trees were old, giants blocking out most of the light even at midday. Air was heavy, damp, smelled of pine and wet earth. Quiet, too. Eerily quiet. Usually, even deep in the woods, you hear something. Birds, squirrels chattering, wind in the leaves. Up there, it was like the woods were holding their breath. I pressed on, marking timber, taking notes, doing what I was paid to do. Used my compass, kept my bearings, made decent progress, though it was slower than I'd hoped. As afternoon started to fade, I started thinking about making camp. Needed to find a decent spot, get a fire going before dark set in proper. I was heading down a slope towards what looked like a small clearing, hoping there'd be a stream or spring nearby. The trees thinned out a bit, and the light filtering through the canopy got softer, dusk settling in quick. The clearing was muddy, a real boggy patch, like a small watering hole animals used. Stank a bit, actually, of stagnant water and rotting leaves. Not ideal for camping, but I was tired and figured I could make do. I stepped into the clearing, rifle slung over my shoulder, just scanning the area, looking for a level patch to set up my bedroll. And that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a bear. Big, dark shape, hunched over by the muddy water. But something was wrong. The shape wasn't right for a bear, too lean, too upright, even hunched over like it was. And it wasn't moving like a bear. More deliberate, slow. I stopped dead, my hand instinctively going to the rifle, kept my eyes fixed on the shape. Slowly, cautiously, I moved a little closer. The air felt heavy, thick with a sudden unease that went beyond just being alone in the woods at dusk. It was a cold, primal kind of unease that prickled the hairs on the back of my neck. As I got closer, the shape started to resolve itself in the fading light, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen before, anything I could even properly describe, not even now, years later. It was crouched by the water's edge, bent over, like it was eating something. And it was big, taller than a man, easily. Covered in hair, thick, matted, reddish-brown hair like old dried blood. But not like bear hair, not exactly. Coarser, thicker in some places, thinner in others. The limbs, Jesus, the limbs. They were long, too long. Arms that reached almost to the ground even when it was hunched over. Hands, more like paws, but with fingers, long, spindly fingers that were manipulating something in the mud. Its back was to me, but I could see the shape of its head. Sort of rounded but elongated, like a dog maybe, but too broad, too heavy. And the way it was set on its neck, there was something deeply wrong about the whole silhouette, the whole posture. Like evolution had taken a wrong turn somewhere. It was making soft sounds, grunting noises, low in its throat. And then it raised its head slightly, just a little, and I saw its face. Not directly, just a profile. Enough to see features, vaguely human features. A brow ridge, a snout-like nose, though flatter, broader. A jaw that moved as it chewed. Something. It looked like roots. It was washing roots in the muddy water, then bringing them to its mouth, gnawing on them, just like an animal, but not. It was the eyes, though. Even in profile, even in the fading light, I saw them. They glinted dark, wet, and intelligent, terribly, horribly intelligent. Not animal intelligence, something else. Something that watched, that understood, that judged. I stood there, frozen, rifle halfway to my shoulder, but I couldn't lift it, couldn't move, just stared, transfixed as this thing went about its grim meal. The silence of the woods was crushing now, broken only by the soft grunts of the creature and the slurping of water. Then something shifted. Maybe it heard me breathe. Maybe it smelled me. Maybe it just sensed my presence. Whatever it was, it stopped eating. Froze. Head still lowered over the water, but still. And the silence deepened, pressed down on me, suffocating, and then it turned. Slowly, deliberately, like it knew exactly what I was, exactly what I was doing there. The full face. I can't properly describe it. It was monstrous. A mix of things that shouldn't be mixed. Man and ape, like the stories said, but so much more. Distorted, grotesque. The brow was heavy, jutting out over deep-set eyes that were black, bottomless. The nose was flat, with wide nostrils. The mouth, wide too. And when it opened just slightly, I saw teeth. Teeth that were too long, too sharp, too wrong for anything natural. And then it screamed. Not a roar, not a growl, not an animal cry. It was a scream. high-pitched, piercing, almost human in its agony, but also wild, feral, something utterly inhuman at its core. It was a sound that ripped through the silence of the woods, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my bones, in my soul, a sound that promised pain, terror, death. It scrambled back from the waterhole, away from me on all fours now, moving with an unnatural speed, a fluid, terrifying grace. It bounded up the slope towards the denser trees, still screaming that awful, soul-shattering scream. Stopped at the edge of the clearing, amongst the shadows of the trees, and turned back to face me. Stood there, half-hidden, glaring, watching. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen solid, rifle still hanging uselessly in my hand. Time just seemed to stop. The world narrowed down to me, and that thing, staring at each other across the muddy clearing. The scream still echoed in my ears, in my mind. The terror, I can't even begin to put it into words. It was more than fear. It was something primal, a cold, deep, instinctive horror that burrowed into my being. Finally, I moved, jerked back to reality by the creature's continued stare. I brought the rifle up, fumbling, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. Pointed it towards the shadows where it stood, but I didn't shoot. Couldn't shoot. Partly from terror, I guess, partly something else. A terrible, confused awe. A sense of wrongness so profound it paralyzed me. The creature just watched me, for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, silently, it turned again, and vanished into the trees, melted into the shadows like it was never there. The silence returned, heavier now, pregnant with dread. But the scream still hung in the air, an invisible vibration. I lowered the rifle, my legs weak, trembling, took a step back, then another, then started to back away, slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the trees where it had disappeared. Kept backing away until I reached the edge of the clearing, then turned and ran. Ran like hell. Didn't stop running until I was miles away, crashing through the undergrowth, stumbling over roots, branches whipping my face. Didn't care about direction, didn't care about anything except getting away from that place, from that thing. Eventually, I collapsed, exhausted, gasping for breath, miles from the clearing, miles from it. Sat there in the dark, shaking, trying to get my head around what I'd seen. Tried to tell myself it was a dream, a hallucination. Too much time alone in the woods, maybe. Fever. Anything but what it was. But I knew it wasn't a dream. The fear was too real, too visceral, and the memory of that face, those eyes, that scream, it was burned into my mind. After a while, when the shaking stopped a little, I forced myself to think. Needed to get back to Willow Creek, needed to get out of those woods. Even though I was terrified to go back anywhere near that clearing, I knew I couldn't stay where I was. I spent the rest of the night huddled by a small fire, too scared to sleep, listening to every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, convinced it was going to come back. Come for me. Didn't dare to even close my eyes. Just sat there, rifle across my lap, waiting for dawn, waiting for something. When morning finally came, weak and grey, I packed up my meager camp and started moving again. Not back towards the plateau, away. South, towards Willow Creek. Kept going all day, pushing myself, ignoring the exhaustion, the hunger, the thirst, driven by pure fear. Along the way, I circled back towards the clearing, just far enough to be safe, just to see. I don't know why. Maybe to prove to myself it had been real. Maybe just some morbid curiosity. I found the watering hole again, empty now, just muddy water, trampled grass, the same stagnant smell. But there were tracks, all around the water's edge, in the soft mud. Tracks that weren't bear tracks, weren't wolf tracks, weren't anything I recognized. They were vaguely human-shaped, footprints, but too big. Way too big. And the toes, splayed out wide, long like fingers. Deep impressions in the mud, clearly made by something heavy, something that walked on 2 legs, sometimes 4. Monstrous, distorted human footprints, going up the slope, into the trees, the same direction the creature had vanished. I followed the tracks for a little way until they disappeared into the denser undergrowth. Then I turned back, didn't want to push my luck. I'd seen enough, more than enough. Made it back to Willow Creek late that afternoon, half-starved, exhausted, spooked to my core. The locals, they took one look at me, at my face, and they knew something was wrong. I told them what I'd seen, told them about the creature, about the scream, about the tracks. At first they didn't believe me, scoffed, laughed, called me crazy, said I'd been out in the woods too long, said it was just a bear or a mountain lion or something ordinary I'd gotten spooked by. They were loggers, tough men, didn't take kindly to stories of monsters, but I persisted. Described it again and again, detailed the tracks, the way it moved, the face, the scream, and they saw something in my eyes. The fear wasn't acting. It was real. It was bone deep. Slowly, doubt crept in. They remembered the old stories, the whispers of the monkey men of the Forbidden Plateau, the stories their grandparents had told, the stories they'd always dismissed as just folklore. They started to look at me differently, not laughing anymore, eyes narrowed, thoughtful, asking questions, quiet questions, about the details, the hair color, the teeth, the scream, the footprints. And the more I told them, the more they started to believe. Not all of them, maybe, but some. Enough to change the atmosphere in the town. A cold fear settled in Willow Creek after I came back. A whisper of unease that lingered in the air. They started locking their doors at night, keeping their children closer, avoiding the woods near the plateau. I left Willow Creek a few days later. Couldn't stay there. Couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even in town. The woods, they felt different now. Haunted, corrupted. I never went back to logging near Willow Creek. Never went back to the Forbidden Plateau. I tried to forget about it over the years. Buried it deep down. Told myself it was stress, fatigue, imagination running wild. But it never really went away. Sometimes late at night I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, the scream ringing in my ears. The image of that face, those eyes, burned into my memory forever. And I know, deep down, it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. I saw something out there, something ancient, something that shouldn't exist, something that hides. Up there on that forbidden plateau. And sometimes when the wind blows just right, I swear, I can still hear it. Faint, distant, but still there. The scream, echoing through the trees, and I know it's still out there, waiting, watching, in the dark heart of the woods, and nobody, to this day, can tell me what it was. Nobody wants to know, and frankly, neither do I. Some things are best left buried, lost in the silence of the trees. But sometimes, silence isn't enough to keep the fear away. Story 14. It's funny, or not funny at all, how some things just stick with you, right? Like little stuff you saw or heard when you were a kid that just burrows into your brain and stays there. And this ain't little stuff, not by a long shot. But it started when I was just knee-high, living in Porto Ashwood back in 04, 05. Logging town, way out in the sticks, everyone knew everyone. Same faces every Sunday at church, same faces at the general store. Quiet place mostly, until it wasn't. See, it started with the hunters, Crump, Kincaid, Hutchins and Buss. Real woodsmen, those guys. They knew the forest like the back of their hands. Gone for days sometimes, tracking game, bringing back venison, bear, whatever folks needed to keep fed. Nobody blinked an eye when they went off into the bush. It was just part of life. But then they came back from near Horn Lake, acting different. Spooked, I guess you could say, though you wouldn't usually see men like that spooked by anything short of a grizzly up close. They didn't come straight into town talking, that's for sure. It was old Mrs. Gable who told my mama about it, and she heard it from her son, who heard it at the saloon from someone who was drinking with Hutchins that night they got back. You know how it is in small places. News travels faster than a river in flood. Anyway, word got around about what they saw. or what they said they saw, because most people rolled their eyes at first. A wild man, that's what they called it. Like something out of a dime novel. They were tracking deer near the edge of Horn Lake, deep in the woods, farther out than most folks ever went unless they were hunting or trapping. Said they smelled something foul first, like a wet dog but 10 times worse, just rank and musky clinging to the air. And then they heard movement in the thick brush, figured it was a big buck, maybe even a bear. But it wasn't. It was him. This creature, man, animal. They weren't sure. Said it stood up out of the brush, tangled mess of hair all over, even covering its face mostly, and a beard like halfway down its chest. Covered in hair, they kept saying. Not like a beard, like fur, all over. They only saw its eyes for a split second, they said. Just dark, wild eyes staring back at them, then poof, gone. Like a deer bolting, but faster, quieter. They tried to follow, crashing through the undergrowth, rifles raised, but it vanished, just swallowed up by the forest. They searched around for a bit, found nothing but broken branches and that awful smell lingering in the air. Crump, the quietest of the bunch, he was the one who kept saying wild man, like he'd seen something and couldn't unsee it. Kincaid, usually laughing and joking, he was stone-faced when he talked about it, all serious and quiet. Hutchins, always the practical one, he just looked uneasy. Bus, the youngest, he looked genuinely scared, kept glancing over his shoulder even in the saloon, like he expected something to jump out of the shadows. Most folks in town chuckled, called them crazy, said they'd been drinking too much of their own moonshine out in the woods. Wild man, they'd scoff, more like wild imaginations. But there was something in the way those hunters acted, something in their eyes when they told the story, that made you pause. These were men who weren't easily rattled. Life went on, summer turned into fall, then winter came and went. Folks mostly forgot about the wild man story. Winter in a logging town is hard enough. Just surviving and keeping warm took up all your brain space. Then spring came again, green shoots pushing up, birds singing louder than ever. Things felt lighter, you know? Like the fear had just been a winter shadow, melting away with the snow. And then it happened again. June. Must have been early June of '05. I remember because school was almost out, and we kids were all excited about summer break. I was about 10 years old then, small for my age, always tagging along with the older boys, trying to act tough. Jim Kincaid, he had a small place just outside of town, near the old Little Qualicum schoolhouse. School was shut down for the summer already, of course, all quiet and empty. Kincaid used to ride his bicycle to town sometimes to get supplies, tobacco, whatever he needed. That day, he was heading back home in the late afternoon. Sun was starting to dip behind the trees, throwing long shadows across the dirt road. He told the story later to a bunch of us hanging around the general store, and his voice still had that edge in it, even months later. He was pedaling along. Road was mostly empty, just the sounds of the woods around him. Birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze. He saw something up ahead on the road, just a figure at first, kind of hunched over. Thought it was maybe someone he knew, walking home or something, didn't think much of it. He kept pedaling, getting closer and closer. He said he got to within maybe 10 yards, maybe less, before he realized something was terribly wrong. He described it as thinking it was just a man at first, just walking, maybe tired or something. But the way it was moving wasn't right. Stiff, jerky movements, almost like it was off balance. And it was broad, wider than a man should be somehow. He said he slowed down a bit, squinting, trying to get a better look, and that's when it turned its head. Not slowly, not like a person would. Snapped its head around, fast, like an animal reacting to a sound. And Kincaid saw its face. He didn't say wild man this time. He just went white as a sheet and mumbled something about it. Just it. He said the face was bestial. That's the word he used. Bestial. Like an animal. But wrong. The hair was there, all matted and thick, covering most of its face still, but he saw enough. Saw the eyes again, same dark, wild eyes as the hunters described. But he saw more this time. He saw teeth, not like human teeth, longer, sharper, yellowed, and the shape of its face, lower forehead, heavy brow ridge, almost pushed forward. He said it stared at him for maybe 2-3 seconds, just locked eyes, and then it lunged. Not at him, thank God, but away. Jumped off the road into the woods on the side. One huge leap, he said, covering ground faster than anything he'd ever seen. He slammed on his brakes, bicycle skidding in the dirt, just stopped there, heart hammering in his chest, staring at the spot where it had vanished. Gone again, just like that. Swallowed up by the trees. He sat there on his bicycle for a long time, he said, just shaking. He thought about going after it, but he knew it was pointless. Whatever it was gone. And something in him, he said, just told him to get the hell out of there. He turned his bike around, pedaled back to town as fast as he could, didn't stop till he was practically in the middle of Main Street, heart still pounding like a drum against his ribs. That time, people didn't laugh. Not after Kincaid. He was a solid man, not prone to flights of fancy. If Jim Kincaid said he saw something, well, people listened. The first story was just that, a story. But 2 stories, 2 sightings, by credible people, that started to change things. The whispers started, louder this time. Fear started creeping in, seeping into the cracks of everyday life in Porto Ashwood. Kids weren't allowed to play out in the woods alone anymore. Women walked together in groups, even just to the store. Men started carrying rifles again, not just for hunting, but just because. Because of it. Lake Horn, which was a pretty place, used to be a spot for picnics on Sundays, kids swimming in the summer. Nobody went near it anymore, not even the fishermen. It became tainted. The woods around Little Qualicum School, too, people avoided that whole area. The schoolhouse stood there empty all summer, just a silent, lonely building next to a stretch of woods where something was lurking. I remember that summer, the feeling in the air. It was hot, still, like usual, but there was a different kind of heaviness, a tension you could almost taste. Folks talked about it, but not openly, not all the time. It was like an unspoken thing hanging over everyone. A secret fear that nobody wanted to admit to. I didn't see it myself. Never did. Thank God, maybe. But I felt it. I felt the fear in my parents' voices when they told me to stay close to home. I saw it in the way men looked at the woods, with a new kind of wariness in their eyes. I heard it in the hushed conversations at the store, at church, always circling back to the same thing, the wild man, or whatever it was. Nobody knew what it was. Was it a man, gone feral? Like those stories you hear sometimes about kids raised by wolves or something? But those stories were just stories, weren't they? And this felt different. This felt real. Too real. Some folks said it was a bear. Just a bear standing on its hind legs or something. But Kincaid and the hunters, they knew bears. They'd hunted bears for years. This wasn't a bear. They were adamant about that. And the smell. Bears didn't smell like that rotten, musky stench they described. Others whispered darker things they usually only talked about in hushed tones after a few too many drinks in the saloon. Old legends, stories from the First Nations people who lived in these lands long before us. Stories about creatures of the forest, things that walked upright, things that weren't quite animal and weren't quite human. Wendigo, some whispered, though they didn't really know what that meant, just that it was something bad, something hungry, something to be feared. Most folks, the practical ones, they just tried to ignore it, tried to go on with their lives, logging, farming, raising families. Pretend it was all just stories, just rumors, just the woods playing tricks on your eyes. But you could tell they were scared too. You could see it in the way they kept their doors bolted at night, the way they kept their children close. And then, nothing. After Kincaid's second sighting, that was it. silence. No more stories, no more sightings. Nothing. Just quiet. The fear lingered for a while, slowly fading over time. People started going back to Lake Horn again, eventually. Kids started playing further from home again. Life in Porto Ashwood went back to being mostly quiet, but it never really went back to normal. Not for me, anyway. And I suspect not for a lot of others either. That summer of '05, that feeling, it stayed, like a shadow in the back of your mind. You knew it was there, even when you couldn't see it. The idea that something was out there, in the woods around us, something unknown, something that didn't fit. I moved away from Porto Ashwood when I was older, got a job in the city, built a life far from the woods and the quiet fear. But sometimes, late at night, when the city noises quiet down and everything is still, I think about it, about the wild man, about those hunters and Kincaid's pale face, about the smell, the dark eyes, the way it vanished into the trees. And I wonder what it was, where it came from, where it went, and if it's still out there, somewhere in the deep woods, still watching, still waiting. And you know what the strangest thing is? To this day, nobody ever found any tracks. No unusual animal tracks, no human tracks, nothing. Just nothing. Like it just appeared and disappeared, leaving nothing but fear and whispers behind. And that, maybe, is the scariest part of all. Story 15. It's been, well, decades now. Decades since it happened. And even saying it out loud still feels ridiculous. Like admitting you believe in fairy tales or ghosts. But I was there. We all were. Me, Thomas, Old Man Hemlock, and young Davy. We all saw it with our own eyes, out there in Union Bay. And no amount of time passing can scrub that image from my mind. We were heading out early, like we always did back then. Spring of '05, that's right. Union Bay was humming with the start of the season. Logging was the lifeblood, you know. The bay would be quieter before the mills really started roaring for the day. That peaceful hush that morning sometimes gives you before all the noise starts up again. Thomas and I lived just outside of Cumberland proper. Walked in with Davy and Hemlock, who lived closer to the water, near the old docks. We met up near where we kept the canoe beached. Nothing fancy, just a sturdy old thing, good for hauling whatever we needed or getting us up the coast a bit. The air was crisp, that kind of spring chill that cuts right through you, even if the sun is starting to peek over the hills. The water was still, almost glass-like, reflecting the grey sky. It was good weather for being on the water, calm and clear. We were headed a little ways up the coast, past the usual spots, hoping to find a decent patch of cedar. Hemlock knew these inlets like the back of his hand. Even at his age, knew where the good stands were, places less picked over. We pushed off from the shore, the scraping of the canoe against the pebbles the only real sound for a bit, besides the dipping of our paddles. We moved in a rhythm we all knew without speaking. Hemlock at the front, guiding us with his hand and low grunts now and then, Thomas and me mid-canoe, and young Davy in the back steering. Davy was always quiet, good kid, though a bit jumpy sometimes. We were hugging the coastline, close to the rocky bluffs that came down right to the water's edge in places. It's quieter there, and often you can spot things you wouldn't see further out. Seals basking on rocks, birds darting in and out of the trees right on the edge of the forest. It was peaceful, the kind of peace you only find away from the grind of town. And then Davy, who was usually looking around like a startled rabbit, he stiffened up, just stopped paddling for a second, and that small change in rhythm got us all looking at him. He pointed, not with his finger exactly, more with his whole chin stuck out, towards a small stony beach we were just drifting past. "Look," he breathed out, barely a whisper, his voice strained. We followed his gaze. At first, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Just a bit of rocky beach, like hundreds we'd passed already, with the dark line of the forest rising steep behind it. But then, as we got closer and the morning light got a little stronger, I saw it, down on the beach, hunched over, was something. At first glance, you really could think it was a bear, maybe a young one, rummaging around in the shallows. They do come down to the shore, sometimes looking for whatever the tide washes in. We'd seen them before, lumbering along the sand. But even from a distance, there was something off about this. It wasn't quite moving like a bear. Bears are heavy, clumsy almost on land. This thing was quicker, more agile, even hunched over. And it was paler, a kind of dirty off-white color that didn't look right for bear fur. Thomas squinted, shielding his eyes from the faint morning sun. Bear, maybe, but looks kinda light-colored. Hemlock, who had the sharpest eyes of us all, even with his years, grunted again. Ain't no bear. His voice was low, gravelly. Look closer. We drifted closer, paddling slower now, curiosity overriding caution. As we got maybe 50 yards away, it became clearer. It was on two legs, sort of. Crouching, yes, but definitely not four-legged. And it was picking at something on the rocks, by the waterline. Clams, maybe? We often found clam beds in places like this. That's when my stomach started to tighten, because even at this distance, you could see it wasn't fur. It was hair, long, matted, tangled hair. And it wasn't just on its back and shoulders like a bear's would be. It covered its whole body, from what I could see. And then it straightened up a little, just to look at something on a higher rock. And even hunched like it was tall, taller than a man standing straight. The hair hung down, obscuring most of its shape, but you could see the outline of a torso, longer and thicker than any man's I'd ever seen. What in God's name? Thomas muttered, his voice gone quiet again. It was then that instinct, dumb and strong, took over. Something primal just clicked in my brain, a warning, screaming danger, wrongness, something isn't right. I reached for my rifle, which we always brought along, leaning against the side of the canoe. For bears, cougars, sometimes just for putting food on the table. Before I even knew what I was doing, I'd shouldered the rifle. It wasn't thought out, not at all. It was just pure, unadulterated reaction. Fear and the sudden urge to protect myself and my friends, maybe even a flash of anger at the weird, unsettling thing that didn't belong there. I aimed more by feel than conscious decision, and fired. The sound exploded across the quiet water, echoing back from the bluffs. The recoil slammed into my shoulder, the smell of gunpowder filling the air, and in that split second, everything changed. The creature. It didn't fall. Like any animal hit by a shot like that, you expect it to drop, maybe thrash. But it just moved. It went from hunched over to standing fully upright in a blink. And it wasn't just standing tall. It exploded upwards. It seemed to grow taller even as we watched, unfolding itself like some monstrous thing from a nightmare. It let out a sound then, a cry that I can still hear it in my sleep sometimes. It wasn't like any animal I'd ever heard before. Not a bear roar, not a cougar scream, nothing human. It was deeper, guttural, but with a high, piercing edge that cut right through you. It was a sound of pure rage, of pain and fury and something else, something ancient and wild. And it moved, faster than anything that size should be able to move. It turned, facing us fully now, and for the first time I got a real look at its face, or what passed for a face. Covered in that matted hair, yeah, but there were features. Rough, brutal, almost human in a distorted, grotesque way. Eyes, dark, deep-set, burning with intelligence, yes, but also something wild, untamed. And a mouth, just a black line in the hair, but wide and cruel. It stood there on two legs, on that rocky beach, hair swirling around it in the faint breeze, and it roared again. That same terrifying sound, echoing off the water and the trees, making the air itself vibrate, and then it ran, not towards us, thank God, but away. It bounded across the beach in just a few strides, its legs, long, powerfully muscled, even hidden under the hair, eating up the ground. It reached the edge of the forest, and with a final earth-shaking cry, it vanished into the trees, just swallowed up by the darkness of the woods. We sat there in the canoe, frozen. No one moved, no one spoke for what felt like a long time. The echo of the gunshot, the creature's cry, everything just hung in the air, the smell of gunpowder still sharp in my nostrils. Finally, Hemlock, his face ashen under his weathered skin, let out a long, shaky breath. "Sweet Jesus," he whispered, his voice cracking. "What in God's name was that?" Davy was trembling, his knuckles white where he gripped his paddle. Thomas was just staring at the beach, where the creature had been, his mouth open, eyes wide and unseeing. It was me who finally spoke, my voice sounding strange and hollow, even to my own ears. I don't know. I shot it." And the weight of that hit me then. What had I done? What had I shot at? Had I killed it? Had I just wounded it? And what if it came back? We slowly, cautiously, paddled closer to the shore, keeping our rifles ready, scanning the tree line. We beached the canoe a little ways down from where we'd seen it, not daring to go right to that spot. We got out, legs shaky beneath us. The beach was just as stony and bare as it looked from the water. No sign of blood, nothing to indicate anything had even been there except the lingering feeling of dread that hung heavy in the air. We looked at each other, faces pale and strained. We searched the beach, keeping our eyes on the tree line every second. We found nothing. No tracks in the rocks, no sign of disturbance, nothing but the usual tide rack and stones. It was like it had vanished into thin air or into the deep, dark woods, taking all trace of itself with it. We didn't say much on the paddle back. The early morning peace was shattered, replaced by a heavy, unsettling silence. The beauty of the bay, which we'd always taken for granted, now seemed tainted. Every shadow in the woods, every rustle of leaves, sounded like it could be it watching us. Back in Union Bay, we told our story. We had to. We were too shaken to keep it in. We told it down at the saloon that evening, over a few stiff drinks. We told it to anyone who would listen, and you know what happened. Laughter, scoffs, patronizing nods, whispers behind hands. "Old Thomas and the boys been into the hard stuff early," someone chuckled. "Saw a bear, scared themselves silly." "Hallucinations," another one said. "Out in the sun too long." Nobody believed us. Not really. They listened politely, maybe out of respect for old man Hemlock, but their eyes told a different story. They thought we were crazy or lying or just plain mistaken, even some of our wives. Well, they tried to be understanding, but you could see the doubt in their eyes. "Maybe it was just a big dog, dear," mine suggested, trying to be gentle. "A big dog, covered in hair, taller than a man, screaming like that." Only Davy's mother, a quiet, religious woman, looked at us with a different kind of expression. Not disbelief, but fear. She didn't say anything, just looked at us with wide, haunted eyes and nodded slowly. Maybe she believed us. Maybe she knew something we didn't. We tried to convince ourselves for a while that we were mistaken, that it was just a weird bear or something we couldn't explain. But deep down we knew what we had seen. We had all seen it. And we knew it wasn't any animal we'd ever known before. We went back out to Union Bay after that. Of course we did. We had to work. But it was never the same. Every trip to the woods, every paddle along the coast, there was always a little edge of fear, a constant scanning of the trees, a listening for sounds that didn't belong. We never saw it again. Thank God. But the memory of it, the feeling of dread and wrongness that stayed with us, it changed the way we looked at the woods, at the wilderness. It was no longer just a place for work and peace. It became something else, something unknown, something maybe dangerous. Sometimes late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the shadows stretch long and dark, I think about it. I think about that creature on the beach, standing tall and screaming at us. And I wonder what it was, what it is maybe, still out there in those woods. And I think about that gunshot echoing across the still water, and I still don't know if I regret firing it, or if I regret seeing it at all. Because sometimes I think it would be easier just to believe it never happened, just to chalk it up to nerves or sunstroke or a trick of the light. But I can't, because we were all there, and we all saw it, and something like that, you don't just forget it, it sticks with you, forever. Out there in Union Bay, spring of 1905, I'll never forget, and I still don't know what it was we saw. And that's maybe the scariest part of all, just not knowing.